Ahead, expect sunshine in the morning with a few more clouds in the afternoon. Can't rule out a stray shower with highs in the mid to upper 80s. I'm meteorologist Sean Everson from KETV Newswatch 7.
1620, The Zone. Traffic.
From the Pyramid Roof and Time Saving Traffic Center. Not a bad start to this Tuesday morning in the Omaha Metro. There's no accidents or delays to report. It's just smooth sailing traffic at the moment. You don't have to worry about being late to your destination. If anything changes, I'll keep you updated throughout the rest of the morning. Just be sure to buckle up and drive safe out there. I'm Joey Colbert.
This time-saving traffic is brought to you by Lanahaw Nurseries.
At Lanahaw, quality and craftsmanship are our standard. From design to install, our experts are here to help bring your outdoor vision to life. Let us get started designing your next project now. Lanahaw Nurseries, 192nd and Center.
ZZ Top, the Elevation Tour. October 1st, Liberty First Credit Union Arena. Playing all their classic hits. ZZ Top. On sale now at libertyfirstcreditunionarena.com or at the box office.
It's simple, Nebraska. Do the FAFSA.
No, it's not a new dance trend.
It's the free application for federal student aid.
That's money for college. Thousands of dollars for classes, books, and housing.
Just 10 minutes is all it takes to apply for the financial aid you need.
With fewer questions and faster fill-out time, it's simple to see how much you're qualified for.
Go ahead, Nebraska. Do the FAFSA.
Get started at dothefafsa.org.
I'm Bridget Condon with NFL Network Now on the Westwood One Radio Network. The Packers veterans reported to training camp Monday, but quarterback Jordan Love will not be practicing with the team until a new contract gets done. Love is entering the final year of a one-year extension to his 4-year rookie contract. General Manager Brian Gutekunst saying, quote, "I'm optimistic. These are big deals. It takes time. I feel we're close, but no real timetables as far as how long it's going to take." Bengals owner Mike Brown says the team will bend over backwards to get a new deal done for wide receiver Jamar Chase, who's heading into the final year of his rookie contract. Brown added, "Next to Joe, he's our next one, and he knows it. We know it. This may take a while." Speaking of Joe, head coach Zach Taylor said Burrow has been fully cleared for contact after suffering a wrist injury that forced him to miss the final 7 games of the 2023 season. And the Texans signed veteran running back Cam Akers, who spent the previous 4 seasons with the Vikings and Rams. This has been NFL Network Now on the Westwood One Radio Network.
All right, when it comes to getting life insurance for your family, a lot of excuses can get in the way. But ask yourself this: if something were to happen to me, who would pay the mortgage, the kids' education, and the other bills? Then forget the excuses and check out Ethos Life, the online, easy way to get life insurance in 10 minutes. Ethos has rates that you can afford, like a $500,000 policy for a 40-year-old male starting at $1 a day or $30 a month with a few health questions and no medical exam. Get your free quote right now at checkethos.com. That's checkethos.com. Not available in all states. Rates do vary.
Are you the parent of a 2 to 7-year-old? Listen closely for an exciting free radio offer. By now, you've probably heard of ABC Mouse, the Parents' Choice Award-winning online learning program that's actually changing the lives of early learners everywhere.
ABC Mouse is like a little one-on-one teacher. It has helped her so much.
Right now, we're offering a special radio promo to try it free for a month, but you have to go to abcmouse.com/radio to claim your free month. That's abcmouse.com/radio.
Sponsored by Age of Learning.
Watching a ball game at Oscar's Pizza and Sports Grill is pretty awesome. Oscar's offers the MLB package, so your team is always on their upgraded audio-video system, and nothing is better than watching the game with a cold frosty one, Oscar's Pizza, or award-winning char-buffed wings. And with daily lunch and dinner specials, it's really a no-brainer. So get ready to watch your favorite team play ball at Oscar's Pizza and Sports Grill, 173rd and West Center Road, and takeout at 162nd and Maple.
My friends swim no matter the season, but my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis can sometimes take me out of the moment. Now, thanks to Skyrizi and clear skin, count me in. With Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. 3 out of 4 people achieve 90% clear skin at 4 months.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist-prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKYRIZI to learn more.
Getting quality employees to fill positions in your company is essential, but finding those people can be a major hassle, unless you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes finding quality people a breeze. And right now you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/free. With ZipRecruiter, one click sends your job to hundreds of top job sites. But more than that, ZipRecruiter's advanced technology identifies the candidates with the skills you need, sends you a list of great matches to review, then actively invites them to apply for your job. And the results speak for themselves. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. That's right, the first day. Now you can focus on your business and let ZipRecruiter do the work finding the best people for you. See for yourself. Experience the ease, efficiency, and power of ZipRecruiter for free. Just go to ziprecruiter.com/free. That's ziprecruiter.com/free. ziprecruiter.com/free.
This is Pretection. Yep, Pretection. The everyday skin protection ritual that protects your skin from mosquitoes. Pre-barbecue. Pre-playground. Pre-everything. Pre-every day. Prevention is the best protection. This summer, make sure you have OFF, the #1 dermatologist-recommended repellent brand. SC Johnson, a family company.
1620 The Zone.
And the 2-2. Driven in the air, right field. Back goes Frelick. Still going. That ball is gone. A line drive home run.
And a little looper into center field. That's going to do it. Here comes Waters home with the first run. So the 2-out walk has turned into a run.
The pitch. Clocked high in the air, deep to center field. Thomas sprints back onto the track, looks up, it's gone. Salvador Perez gives the Royals the lead. A 2-run blast to straightaway center. Astro delivers. Slider drilled, high in the air, deep left center field, way out of here. Bobby Witt Jr. continues his surge. A 3-run homer. He is unstoppable.
Here's the pitch. And a swing and a high fly ball. Deep left. Back goes Gurriel on the track. He'll look, and it's long gone. It is out of here. A home run by Renfroe. He got all of it. His 9th on the year on a 2-1 pitch, and the Royals add to their lead. It's 9-3.
Live from 50th and Capitol Avenue in the Big O. This is Mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and 1620 The Zone TV. Now here's Gary, Nick, and Jimmy.
You're cooking with gas. Hey, good morning. We'll hear from him tomorrow. That's the head football coach, Matt Rule. Good morning, everybody. Live and local on a Tuesday. In Fuego is Bobby Witt Jr. I'm attracted to a man. Not afraid to say it. I am attracted to watching Bobby Witt Jr. run the bases, which he has done a lot of lately. Last night, he was a simple single away from hitting for the cycle. Yeah. An amazing post-All-Star break as Bobby Witt Jr. and the Royals won their 4th in a row, and he is in Fuego. But watching him run the bases, I know everybody likes to watch him hit, Nick, because everything now looks like a beach ball to him.
Yes.
But, man, when he hits it and he runs, especially when he's going like first to third, I have a little pitter-patter. I'm not afraid to admit it. Also not afraid to admit that one of the best offseason moves in all of baseball was the Royals locking up Bobby Witt Jr.
That's for sure.
Even if you're not a Royals fan, he's fun to watch. And he has made the K a place that sounds awful familiar from about a decade ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing well. Last night, they got into a little brouhaha with the Arizona Diamondbacks when Bobby Witt Jr. was up to try and hit for the cycle and got beamed on the shoulder. Salvi and Torey Lovello got into it.
See, as you're, and of course now there's a lot of scoreboard watching with what the Twins were up to, and of course both teams I needed to lose because Cleveland just can't drive in runs now. Now it's not a matter of getting hits; it's just driving in runs. To the point that I had to watch.
Like
you said you like
this.
Bobby Witt Jr. running the bases much better than Jake Rogers of Detroit running the bases and having the little league in the park home run.
I tell you, I like.
That's what Cleveland's going through right now.
I like because he's a good pitcher. I like watching Skubal pitch. He was pretty dang magnificent yesterday.
Sure was.
The Royals
sure was.
Hey,
you missed it Friday. Nick predicted all this. He was willing this to happen for his poor team.
I don't like the way that they were trending.
I give you credit. You predicted the demise of your team.
Thank you.
Jed Hoyer predicted the demise of my team yesterday, and they went out and won.
Yes, it is.
So
good win.
It's just a very is it
against the Brewers? Sure,
they're going to do it again. They're going to say we're going to be sellers, and all of a sudden the Cubs will get hot.
Mm-hmm.
But the Royals are fun to watch, and locking up Bobby Witt Jr. where you don't have to go, oh, man, this guy's having an incredible season. I wonder if he'll stay. Well, you've already taken care of that. I mean, look at Kansas City right now is in a really good spot. You've got the best player in one sport across the parking lot.
True.
And he's only 28.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got what is starting to become one of the best players this season, if not the best player in baseball this season, across the parking lot from where that 28-year-old magician plays that has got a couple of Super Bowl rings. I mean, it's not bad. Not bad right out there at the Truman Sports Complex to have Mahomes and Witt Jr. doing what they're doing.
Would you say they're coming, the Royals?
I don't know. They won 4 in a row. They are only 4 back of your Guardians.
Yes, and so are the Twins.
And the Red Sox lost last night, so they're 2 clear of the wild card?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It hasn't gone full football mode.
This is very similar.
Well, that's important, Jimmy, because the whole knock is, okay, can the Royals keep us until training camp opens? Well, the Chiefs have been in training camp for a couple of days, and the Royals
hotter
are still
than ever,
relevant.
And they're hot.
Thank you, number 7.
This reminds me a little bit of I've never been
Angels
a Royals
95?
fan, but when I found them to be appealing to watch, especially when you've seen guys come through Omaha and have a major impact with the big club, this does remind me, like even Vinny and I mean Salvi's just the guy. Everybody loves Salvi. He's the ambassador, if you will. But when you think about Bobby Witt, the time that he spent in Omaha, Vinny Pasquantino, and the time he spent in Omaha as well, and starting to see that core group and those guys having major impacts, it pains me to say it's a likable team. It's a likable team. And for a lot of the reasons you throw out with the way Bobby Witt Jr. plays the game. And I mentioned this earlier, when Bobby Witt Jr. got signed, I look at Kansas City and Cleveland in very similar ways as far as how they spend money.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always thought about the one that got away. I've mentioned him many, many times, happens to play the same position that Bobby Witt Jr. does, and Frankie Lindor, that there were always maybe a guy here or there, maybe a pitcher here or there that they would extend. Jose Ramirez, they're lucky that he didn't want more because I think his overall value is probably greater than what he signed for. When the Royals got that with Bobby Witt Jr., to me, that was the equivalent of if Cleveland was able to sign Frankie Lindor, where you have a centerpiece that both offensively and defensively will help you for years to come, and you can build around that. So I have envy there for Kansas City because, I mean, it that early in a guy's career, it's not the most Kansas City Royals thing to sign him for what they did and to lock him down. Like you said, now you can watch the guy having just a hell of a year, and you don't have to worry about, oh, gosh, is he going to be on the move? Can we afford him? No, you're right, because you already have him. It's a very weird feeling, I'm sure, for Royals fans, and if that ever were to be the case with Cleveland.
I mean, they won their 56th game last night. They won 56 games all of last year.
Yeah,
they're good.
October 1st.
If you know, you know, and you watch him, like especially if you've seen him in person, like if you ever saw him at Warner Park, you've been to the K to watch him. I mean, they're just if you know, you know. Like when you watch athletes and you see him in person, you're like, man, that person is different, and he's in God mode. But you also see this is the anti-Royal thing where one player is red hot, but the team is not. And now you got Bobby Witt Jr., who still mysteriously only had one at-bat in the All-Star game a week ago today, is in fuego, and the Royals are playing really, really well right now. And he's become must-watch. Again, even if you're not a Royals fan, you just appreciate how damn good shortstops are in the majors right now. But that guy not playing very far from Omaha, he is must watch. And last night, man, he'd had 3 straight 3-hit games. And what does he do in his first at bat last night against the Diamondbacks? Triple.
Yep.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad, especially if you have him on your fantasy team.
Is he on your fantasy team?
He's not on my fantasy team.
Okay, I couldn't remember if he was or
We
not.
had somebody in my league pick him up when he was in Omaha.
Okay.
And it was, everybody went, oh, that's a great move. That's a great move.
Oh. So it's a keeper.
Damn.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I do have a suggestion, though, for baseball. I don't really have a desire to be the commissioner of baseball.
Not yet.
But watching that game last night, and I'm always amused when you get a little brouhaha and people get a little, on edge. And I love that Salvi was chirping back at Torey Lovello. The guys in the bullpen that don't know what to do.
Should we run out?
Should we run out?
Yeah.
Like most of them are hanging out at the gate.
Yeah.
And then, it takes them a while
It's
to
usually a
get
slow
to the
trot,
middle
too.
of the field.
Hold on,
I just
we're
think
coming.
from now on that if we're going to have a bench clearing brawl, we should just let the bullpen guys not have to run all the way to home plate. They should just meet in the middle of the outfield.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be like Anchorman.
2 different fights.
They could just meet there and they
Yeah.
could go at it, and they don't have to expend all that energy in sprinting in for the bullpen. And by the time they get there, it's probably broken up.
Yes.
And the pitchers ask the other pitchers, what are we
Well,
pissed off about?
how often do you ever see the guys from the bullpen on a dead-ass sprint, too?
If it's legit, see, that's how I watch.
That's when you know it's a good fight.
So last night I'm watching, and the Royals relievers, Will Smith wasn't in a real hurry to leave the bullpen. He wanted to stand by the gate, stand by the Kansas City police officers, this doesn't seem like it's going to escalate. But if they're on a dead sprint, then it's go
that's
time.
on.
You're
legit
cooking with
fight.
some peanut oil.
Yep. And there's multiple instances going on throughout maybe what the main culprit was, and then you've got the little breakout fights that are happening as well. Then that's when you know, hey, I got to get in on it.
It's not our fight.
Yeah. I'm all for it though, as far as
Fighting?
having the centralized place right in shallow center field.
There's the other thing that I would suggest.
That's where Rugnador Dewar got his shot in right there. I think that should be the spot right there at second with Joey Betts. One of the greatest punches ever.
And it's only allowed to be guys from the bullpen.
Yes.
Yes.
So here's my suggestion. Again, if I was going to be the commissioner of baseball, and again, I have no desire to be the commissioner of baseball, but if they asked, when you have a situation like last night where the Diamondback pitcher, he had struggled the day before because he pitched against the Cubs, he had no control, and who knows what he was doing, and both teams got warned, and that led to the ejection. I would suggest to the Savannah Bananas a change in the rule. So if you get hit by a pitch, you have 2 options. You can either take your base or the count, you stay in the box and the count resets to no balls, no strikes.
But what if it was a 2-0? Perhaps. Maybe
you have the option.
You have the option
Yeah,
to
you
go
have
and
the option.
take that as the ball, and then
No.
3-0.
You have the option to take being hit by a pitch or stay in the box.
Okay.
So that wouldn't be a factor.
Okay. I just thought if I could reset the count and now have a 3-0 count, that would be better than resetting it where I'm on an even plane.
It'd be your choice. I think the Savannah Bananas should start this and see what that looks like. I don't know how many times guys in the Savannah Banana games get hit, but they're kind of the experimental. They're like the G League for Major League Baseball.
So are they now the new test market? Because I feel like if a ball is ever coming close to a Savannah Banana, they do a backflip and avoid it, or they do something that you might see out of Mortal Kombat Matrix, and pull the old. So the things that they can do to avoid it, you probably never see it. And if you do see it, there's going to be some type of routine afterwards, where it might be like a West Side Story thing where it'll be an organized fight. Yeah. By the way, I didn't tell you this.
Do a dance routine after?
This was over the 4th of July break. They had a game on, I think it was on ESPN. I watched about a good 5 or 6 innings of it. And then I know that they reset the game. And then there was a lot of things I was hard for me to follow. I'll admit, I was a little entertained because, like wrestling, the dudes are athletes. And they're all good ball players. They all either played college ball or played significant summer ball. Some of them are former minor leaguers. And so they've got game. And I got to admit, for what it was, it's like going to see Twisters. I'm not holding it up to being some Oscar award-winning movie. So as long as I know that going in, I'm going to be entertained. And so I got to admit, when they come, if they come here, I'd go. I'd take
Yeah,
the
I've
boy.
I've
I'd
not,
take the boy.
There was a push last year. Two entities were trying to secure the Savannah Bananas.
Yeah.
I've not heard if that is in motion this year to come to Omaha when they announce their world schedule in 2025. All right, welcome in, everybody. Off and rolling. Is this, because Big Ten Media Days start today in Indianapolis, is this the end of the offseason? Is tomorrow the end of the offseason? Is July 31st the end of the offseason? Is there an offseason period? Because I just want to know for planning purposes.
For me personally, I think July 31st. When fall camp officially opens up, then we're done. Because think about it. Some of the conference media days, like the Big 12, you still have a couple of weeks in between before you adjourn from media days to the start of fall camp. So there's still a little bit of that off season. You can have that immediate buzz after the talking portion of conference media days, but then you've got a week lull of waiting for it to start. So I say the start of fall camp is officially the start of the season.
Like, when does, for teachers, your off season is officially over? Like the first day you got to go back?
That's what they tell me.
And by the way, it seems like school is starting earlier and earlier. Some places start like August 8th.
That's
I know a lot of my friends that are teachers report on August 1st.
So is that the end of the offseason? Or for a teacher, is the end of the offseason when you first see those ads on TV promoting back to school items?
But those come out in June now.
That is true. I think they're used to that. They can compartmentalize the back to school ads. I think it's when you have to go into that classroom and you got to, if you're a decorator of your classroom or you're putting stuff in there. I think once that happens, and then you probably have a staff meeting of
they
how
have
the
lots
season,
of meetings. They love their meetings.
How the school year is going to go. I don't even think by the time the kids come in, I think you're already adjusted and you've already put yourself in that mindset. But I think it's when you have to first bring stuff from home and start filling your classroom with stuff. Mm-hmm. To me, that's probably, now I'm not a teacher, so.
I can tell, like if you're going out for dinner or drinks or whatever, you can tell who are teachers.
Oh, God, yeah.
Like starting right now.
Yep.
They are the ones that are probably the loudest, the most obnoxious, the ones that are just getting one last in. Yep. And God bless you, because I wouldn't want to be you. No. And it's okay. So for like the next 10 days, if you're in an establishment and you're like, why are those people so loud? Oh, it's all the teachers at Westside Middle. I get it.
If you go to any sports bar near a high school in December, you will know exactly when the last day of school for the teachers was, because they will be there in a group and they will be getting after it. And it is the exact same thing to start the school year as well.
Always an early release day. So by 12:30, they are.
Yep.
I hate to burst your balloon, but any establishment next to a school usually is going to have a teacher in it after school.
Well, that is true. That's why they get their summers off.
Had a rough day. My TikTok didn't go. I couldn't get the kids to sing the song I wanted them to. But Big Ten Media Days start today in Indianapolis, Illinois, Northwestern, Ohio State, Purdue, who else? Rutgers, and Wisconsin.
Yeah.
All right, so that is the lineup for the Big Ten Media Days. Tomorrow, Nebraska is there. I heard somebody say that today is monumental. Why? Because I got rejected by the Masters again?
I haven't got my email yet.
Man, sorry.
I was
rooting for both of you.
You said it, Bruns. Who else? I saw someone else do it last night too. A lot of people are posting their rejection letters.
Hey,
I haven't got mine yet.
Hey, I just tweeted out, and this is a tip for everyone. You don't have to be a teacher. You can be anyone. Never fear rejection for a life of regretting. Thank you. But I heard the word monumental. Really? Media Days, Big Ten Media Days are monumental?
If anything's really monumental.
It's the overstuffed Big Ten that has 18 teams that whenever you see the media polls that came out yesterday from an abundance of sources, there's a lot of teams in this league. It is the overstuffed Big Ten. And we're here for it because it is football, and we are one step closer to the football season. And we'll talk a lot of football today. Joey Kaufman will join us at 7:30. Sam McEwen's going to join us at 8. What was Sam's a little bit of late riser in Indy?
Apparently so. Just wanted to make sure, because some of the guys that cover Nebraska are going to be just doing tomorrow, and that's it. I mean, it's a 3-day thing.
Yeah,
others are doing the 3 days. Others maybe are just doing 2 days. So I wanted to make sure that Sam wasn't traveling today.
Okay.
And so he said, well, since you reached out, could we do 7:45? I'm like, you know what? I'll do you one better. How about 8?
So Sammy Mack will join us at 8. The voice of the Badgers, 8:30, will be Matt LePay, who will be able to drink at games now at Camp Randall.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, you
to
didn't,
them.
you didn't have to sneak them in. Be able to
I'll
drink
hope for the jumping.
16th school that will allow alcohol inside of the stadium. Some people, when that was announced yesterday, were shocked. Like
No, they were shocked because they didn't realize
I've been to Camp Randall, and I thought they've been selling alcohol the
Yeah,
entire time.
I
at
thought they
Camp
were one of the
Randall.
first ones.
Yes.
You say 16 like in the Big Ten?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
16th
So there's
18th.
2 schools that do not sell alcohol at the games.
You
Okay.
know one of them.
I've been there.
Mhm.
Who's the other one? Northwestern?
Is it?
No,
I think you
Northwestern
can. I
is
think you
selling
can.
alcohol.
Okay.
Is it Indiana? I think it might be Indiana.
I'll find out.
BC will join us at 9. Andy Kendi at 9:45. We got a lot of people in Indianapolis today. And then Matt Verzal is at the Northwoods All-Star game in Mankato, Minnesota. So he's going to chime in because his nephew, Max Butenbach, the Husker soon-to-be sophomore, is having a heck of a summer, and he is in the All-Star game in the Home Run Derby today. So Verz is already in Mankato. He texted me yesterday, and he goes, man, what a lovely college town. And I said, yes, it is. I go, isn't it amazing that the Vikings used to hold training camp there and how cool it was to go to Blakesley Stadium? That's where that's the Mankato home football stadium, and that's where the Vikings would hold training camp. And I went a couple of times. It was a great setup. It was so cool in like a small town, kind of like St. Joe with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Small town. It was all Vikings. It wasn't very far from the cities. And then, of course, like most NFL teams, when they build their giant complexes, they have, they want to control training camp, so they have training camp on site. But Mankato was pretty cool when the Vikes were there. I mean, there's a lot of stories of things that went on while the Vikings were in Mankato.
Boats.
You had unfortunately had the death of Corey Stringer.
Oh yeah. Yep.
You had you had Randy Moss hanging out in the town for a while,
which I can only imagine was probably very eventful.
Rich Gannon.
People forget too when UNO had a football team. Every time they started getting them in their non-conference because Mankato was not an NCC member. That they usually would play Minnesota State, or they were known as Minnesota Mankato back then. And then if they were playoffs, usually UNO and Mankato played a lot too in the football playoffs. So we're not talking hockey here.
Mankato's got a great athletic department. They won both the men's and women's Division II basketball. Football has been good. Hockey, of course, is Division I. They were okay after Mike Hastings left.
Yeah,
but they've got a nice
a nice
athletic program in Mankato. Good spot, not very far from the cities.
Yeah,
it's good, solid college town.
So is the Northwoods League?
I'm sold.
Maybe we'll have to ask Verz this one. I thought they do their all-star, like the home run derby, and then they do their all-star game, all their festivities, and then I think their the actual league championship is this weekend. I think they go regular season, all-star, then whatever their postseason is.
It makes sense why they got a couple more weeks, and then guys come back to school. So it's a great league.
Yes.
And so Verz will join us sometime this morning. That's the lineup brought to you by the Roof Freeze at John Higgins Weather Guard. The number to get into the conversation. You want to talk a little football today? We'll talk a lot of that, whether it be in Indianapolis or where the ACC is or, among other things. Like what's going to be on Netflix at the end of the month involving Connor Stallion.
It's kind of funny how we talked about this yesterday I wonder if that will be a story. Sharon Moore was going to be speaking to Big Ten Media Days. I wonder if he'll be asked. And then as they're going into Big Ten Media Days, there's going to be a Connor Stallions Netflix special.
And he's going to be on it. And the only thing I want to know is I got to know about the Central Michigan gear and the night at Michigan State.
Yep.
That's the story that I want to know. 402-951-1620. That is the hotline brought to you by 42 Degrees The Source by your mom's house. You can always email us into the Equitable Bank inbox. Good morning, Doug, and the great crew at Equitable Bank. Gary at 1620thezone.com.
Handley at 1620.
Also on the J-Tech Construction Zone Twitter feed at Gary Sharp 1620.
At Nick Handley 1620.
Iowa JD. Well, I got a question about his football team.
Yeah.
That I'll pose a little bit later in the show. I tweeted out my rejection notification from the Masters. He said, you dodged a bullet. Thank God. Golf sucks.
He just does not
So does
like
your
golf.
strike zone.
Oh, take that.
At Gary Sharp 1620 is where you can praise the sport of golf.
We did that a lot last week. I think, did you, by the way, I don't know if you saw this. Iowa JD was all over my son's hat as far as it having a little bit of a flat bill. He said, you need to stop that before it starts. Yeah. Come on, man. The kid's he's 3.5 years old. Wears hat however he wants to wear his hat right now.
Yeah, he's cool. That's what the kids are doing. Yeah. Just trying to make your kid cool.
I noticed in the picture that I posted, because he had his little Bennington 12s. They were helping him out for his last T-ball game. They all showed up because he was their bad boy and showed up for them. It was really cool.
Nice.
But his hat in the picture is almost like inverted, like going upwards. So I understand Iowa JD's concern, which it's appreciated that he's looking out and wanting to send the kid down the right path. But don't worry, Dad's got this.
Yeah, I'm wearing, for people that are watching on 1620 The Zone TV, I have the old school Omaha Royals hat.
It's pretty sweet.
So I bought it over the weekend out of Warner Park. It cost me $42. I remember when you used to get fitted hats and they were about $25.
Yep.
Now they're $42 for a minor league fitted hat.
Yep.
I realized something. I'm a tweener with my head.
Uh-oh.
I used to be a 7.5.
Yeah.
And I went with the 7 1/8, and it was a little snug.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I don't want that tight because, I'm going to take my hat off. I'm going to have a ring. I'm going to look like a Millard North football helmet. I'm going to have a ring around my forehead. And so I had to go 7.5, and it's not tight. So I'm a tweener. My head has shrunk.
It sucks, but I always feel like you got to go a size smaller than the bigger one, because I've been in between the 3/8 and a half, and I don't think my head's gotten that much bigger, but I think certain styles, because the City Connect hat that I just recently got, that was a little snug as a 7 3/8. So I tried to say, I'm sorry, it was a
huge dome.
It was an earlier Cleveland hat. It was just this black one that I have. That was a 7 3/8. That one was a little snug. So on the City Connect one, I got a 7.5, and it fit perfect.
By the way, before I forget, yesterday's poll, speaking of hats, 67% think that Gary should start wearing cowboy hats. So.
Yeah, Jim, by the way, tried to Photoshop some. We looked like pilgrims. Yeah,
and that's not the hat I'm looking for.
Yeah, we're not going to be pilgrims.
Well, I think it'd be difficult for us to be pilgrims.
It would be.
I'm just saying.
It would be.
I know a lot.
Sharp and Handley with John Smith.
I know a lot of things have happened, and a lot of rules have been changed.
Yep.
Okay, but I think that the ability for us to be pilgrims,
it's been phased out.
I think we passed it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't think we can go back.
I think we've moved on. Yeah, I don't think there's going back to that. So yeah, but I appreciate Jim's attempt to it. But I did think both of us looked like you had almost like a crooked pilgrim hat on, and then
almost like a Walt Frazier hat, Bonnie and Clyde hat.
I had like a 10-gallon thing going too. So yeah. It didn't motivate me that, I need to look into this too. I look pretty good in that. No.
Just looking for a solid cowboy hat.
You've got options right by where you live.
I know, but I have to be prepared to go in there. Like I just can't. I have to have an idea of what I want.
Yeah,
I can't just go in and browse because I got a feeling like when you go into those kind of stores, they're on it.
Yeah,
like they don't want to dilly dally around. They want, what do you want? Okay, belt buckle, jeans, boots, hat. This is what I got. Okay, they don't want somebody who goes, I want to be a fake cowboy.
Do you have a certain color in mind?
I want to go in there and go, this is what I want.
Do you have a certain color in mind?
Light color.
I did think of that yesterday, like Cody Johnson's.
Like a light brown? Maybe more of a tan?
No. I'm Glenn Powell, I told you.
Oh, okay. So you're, all right. You're going to go that color.
Yes.
Well, then just, you come in and just say, hey, okay, never mind.
I can't go in there and go,
I want this. I want to be going.
Can you dress me like Glenn Powell?
Sir, that's an Ozempic ad. Oh, shoot. Let me turn the page. There you go.
Well, how accurate do you want to be? Because there's certain things that we can and can't do.
I walk in and go,
come on,
dress me as a cowboy. I want to be a cowboy. All right, we are off and running 35 past the hour. Don't forget, as you go through your day today, life is better when you drink something out of a red plastic cup. Thank me later. It's Mornings with Sharp and Handley and Jimmy on 1620 The Zone. All right, welcome back in. Mornings with Sharp and Handley. Jimmy, I'll have an update coming up after 7. We are in Omaha, not in Indianapolis. We will follow and report from afar, but we have plenty of friends. I think 5 different people will be on the floor of Lucas Oil Stadium when they talk to us today. I did not see any of the early arrivals last night posting pictures of their trip to St. Elmo's for the shrimp cocktail, and those people, quite frankly, are doing it wrong. It is not a bucket list, gotta go every time I go to Indianapolis. I don't know why people don't immediately go to Shake Shack.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
They have a Shake Shack not very far from Lucas Oil Stadium. They also have one of the last bastions of obesity. They have a White Castle.
I
thought you were talking about my hometown.
I long for the days that we would just have one in Omaha.
Do not have churros at the White Castle in Indianapolis,
No,
Jimmy.
and it's funny because I've never had one. Apparently, that's a myth.
Wait a minute. Is that I don't live in San Antonio, but we think that everybody in San Antonio eat churros?
Yeah. There are lots of other much unhealthier
White
things
Castle
that we
offered
eat.
it.
Hold on.
Try to
here.
say White Castle
Hold
should
on
offer
here.
churros?
This is like this is a moment here. Are you telling me that when I go to the state fair and when I've gone through my whole list of things I want on a stick, and I'm like, you know what? It's about 10 o'clock at night. I don't think I've eaten enough that I'm getting a churro and thinking, man, wouldn't it be awesome to live in San Antonio where you can walk out your front door and there's probably instead of an ice cream truck in San Antonio, there's a churro truck. That's not true?
No, because I was always where were these churros when I was growing up? I've never had
this
one.
Is misinformation by the media.
Like, we can get you diabetes and get you fat. We don't need churros. There are lots of things there that are much more unhealthy.
So wait, I'm trying to figure this out though. Is there supposedly, if there was a White Castle in San Antonio, that they would also have churros?
It would have to be very localized.
Yeah. Okay. Because I just don't associate.
They would have the burrito White Castle burger.
The breakfast taco, which is
you would just ground a slider meat and he'd have the crystallized onions.
Even worse.
Oh, that actually sounds kind of good.
It does.
I did. I always, and maybe it was ever since the movie. Yeah, I saw the movie and I didn't mind it. That I always wanted a White Castle in Omaha. I had one in Chicago. It was good.
It's the frozen White Castles. If you go to the grocery
I've never
store,
had those. Good.
I have.
Not bad.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
bad. But the problem is when you have one, you're on your 12th and you're like, ooh, that was a bad decision.
The
But
entire box is
they-
gone.
They tasted great.
Yeah.
Speaking of the breakfast burrito, I have a question for our listeners out there that live in Bellevue. Twice I've tried to go. It's highly recommended. Dan Hoppen and others have recommended this as a good breakfast spot for like breakfast burritos. Why is For the Love of Food Cafe closed? It says there's a sign on the window at the front that says temporarily closed. I've been there. I've been
Temporarily
there
closed.
twice. I went there not too long ago, and it was closed. And I'm like, okay, maybe they're like taking vacation. And then I went back recently, and they still are temporarily closed. I would like to try For the Love of the Food Cafe in Bellevue. If anybody has any word on when they're going to reopen, because multiple people have told me you have to go there for breakfast.
I've never been. I've also heard of it. Actually, I might have also heard of that through Dan Hoppen. No, I'm not seeing anything. Why? I'm wondering if they're doing a little upgrade, a little remodel. Because I remember when, now, hopefully they don't suffer the same fate. Rivera's, which was a very good Mexican place off of Pacific. They were closed for, almost 6 to 7 months because they were doing a renovation and an upgrade. And then when they finally opened, COVID happened.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Talk about timing.
Yes, not good timing.
It's like Florida State and Clemson. Living in Florida, when we have a thing called season where it's basically Thanksgiving to Easter is when all the snowbirds come down. And so places are busier. But then when it's just the locals, it slows down a little bit during the summer. There will be restaurants that will close for like 3 weeks or so, go on vacation. I don't know if that's the case, but I really want to try it because they are getting huge reviews. Wouldn't it be nice today to watch the 3-day coverage of the Big Ten? This is the conference, and I hope they beat their chest and they have a story to tell. Wouldn't it be nice to have a Paul Feinbaum type show at 2:00 this afternoon. You know, you get the regulars on BTN.
Yeah.
And they do their little podium stuff. Also, we need to limit podium time. It's just a request. They do their stuff and they interview all the coaches. But then at 2:00, like the Paul Feinbaum of the Big Ten comes on. I don't agree with a lot of stuff that Dabo Swinney is saying, but he is absolutely right. For a conference that doesn't have an identity in football, in the ACC, can you imagine what a Paul Feinbaum type show would be like if they had a character like that talking about the ACC nonstop? You may make fun of Paul and call Paul and listen to a show and go, "What in the hell is this?"
You can't turn away.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. If it's kind of like Le Batard's show, you don't get the show.
Yeah,
you have to be a regular to watch it and understand, and that the characters are the callers. But there are people. He is talking SEC every single day, whether you like it or not, because there are people in in the entire fan base of the SEC that have so much passion that they drive a show like that.
Yeah.
So you can have that. I don't know if you'd have that in the ACC. And even though I have advocated for this for a long time, maybe even like inserting myself into the conversation, I don't know that there's enough passion for college football across the Big Ten. In certain parts, like here, no doubt.
Yeah.
But for 18, I don't know, let's see. In the SEC, there's probably 10 of the 11. Not 10, 11. 10 of, no, maybe 15 of the 16 have super passionate fans that you can drive a show like that. I don't know if the Big Ten has enough passionate fan bases for college football that you could have a show like that. But I tell you, if they had even 2 hours on the Big Ten network, it'd be golden, Jerry. Absolutely golden. And Sweeney wants one for the ACC. And I'm like, Dabo, look at this handshake meme.
The part about Feinbaum is it does bring, for a lot of people that know of these great SEC schools and a lot of the game day traditions and you got to go to the Grove and all these different things that people want to experience at an SEC football SEC home game. At least when I was growing up, that was the extent of it. I didn't know how, because I always thought Nebraska was one of very few where you just eat, sleep, and die.
Keep that mindset. Make sure you get your 3-year-old to think the same way.
Well, yeah, we start something here. But the whole part about the SEC that as I got older, and when Feinbaum was becoming a lot more mainstream, was, I mean, he reaches to that. He reaches to the passion that all of a sudden the reason I think most people listen outside of the SEC is because they want to hear the callers. They want to hear what people have to say. And the fact that people, I mean, it's essentially a daily Big Red overreaction. Yeah, it's an SEC overreaction every day.
My buddy Dari, who's the face of the SEC network, people know him from his time in Lincoln. He during the summer when Feinbaum goes on vacation, they'll ask people to host the show.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of people that step up to host the show. And so like he does it like 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Where they're like, hey, we need somebody. They scoot him towards the studio there in Charlotte.
You're part of the network.
He said, when you get done, you are worn out.
I bet.
He said, it's like nonstop. And by the time you get to the last hour, you have no idea what's gone on because it's just caller after caller and the callers are arguing with the callers.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of moderating. He said, I walk off the set, I go home and I don't smoke. He goes, I'm thinking about having a cigarette.
Yeah. You probably have.
But that's the passion of the fans.
It is.
Whether it's
other than Vanderbilt.
Collar on collar crime. Yeah.
Can you really name one school in the SEC that would not have a large following of this year round? I can't. Yeah. And the 2 editions are no exception to that either.
So if this is a quote unquote monumental day at the Big Ten Media Days, such a ridiculous thing. Of the 4 that are coming here, who has a passionate, what you would consider a passionate fan base, where they will travel, they will consume the content, they will talk about it year round. It is their life. It is a religion. Ooh, a half of one. Now, Oregon's fan base is a little bit smaller, but they are pretty passionate.
Yeah.
USC, there's so many other things to do.
Right.
Washington has passion. I don't know if it's a religion. And then UCLA, I have more passion for my sparkling ice. I'm going to drink at 7. Some of their fans have.
Yeah, Oregon was the first one that I would consider.
They're just a smaller.
Yeah,
they're a smaller fan base, but they do. If you are in it, you are definitely in
Agreed. It. Washington, I would question this. I don't know. So this is something that I
get very loud there.
Absolutely. I look forward to finding this out in years to come. Are they just when you come here, we're going to make it tough on you, but as far as extending that network on the road, especially now having to go coast to coast, that say Washington is playing in Piscataway or they're playing in College Park, that you're going to see a lot of purple. I don't get the feeling that they travel, but I think when things are there or regional to them, I think they're probably present.
I don't remember.
I just don't know.
When Nebraska and Washington would periodically play a home and home.
91, did they?
I don't remember an abundance of Washington fans.
Yeah.
Now, there were a ton of Nebraska fans that would always go out to Seattle.
I remember the 2011 home game, and I was at that game.
There weren't many there.
I mean, it was the same. You saw the sliver of purple in Memorial Stadium, but as far as walking around before and after the game, going up to the stadium, I don't recall seeing a lot of Washington fans. So I don't know. Now, mind you, that was over 10 years ago.
That hasn't changed.
I think Oregon is the one that is probably going to represent the most out of any 4 of those, but I wouldn't say it's going to be anything close to what you'd see from Nebraska or Ohio State or Michigan or Iowa or any, the majority of the teams in the Big Ten.
You guys said there were a lot of Oregon fans here, right? A few years ago.
Oh, they're the smaller fan base, but but if you're in it, you're all the way in.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was some, and this was, again, the cool factor with Oregon. There were some people that I've known. There was actually a buddy of mine. His son just became a huge Oregon fan. This was a while back. It was like 10 years ago, but became a huge Oregon fan.
Oh, Anthony Thomas. You deserve a pat on the back.
Right. So
no Danny O'Neill, Ricky Whittle.
It's the same thing when I all of a sudden I see these random collection of Texas fans in the state that never lived in the state of Texas, but for some reason they like the burnt orange because they were almost like the anti-Nebraska fans, so they wanted to go after or embrace the team that was getting under Nebraska's skin at the time.
But you know where I've been told that started? No. College World Series.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s when Schiraldi and Clemens and Gus was here all the time, they developed a Texas fan base in Omaha, and then it spread throughout Nebraska.
Then they started rooting for their football team too, and it got really weird here in Nebraska, that is. So there's a few of the closet ones, maybe not even closet ones, but just spread out. But I think Oregon, out of all of those teams, I think Oregon does have a little bit of that universal reach because, again, there was the cool factor. Mm-hmm. There were young people who thought, oh, Oregon's pretty cool. Look at the way that they run their offense. They're innovative. They got all the uniforms. They're Nike. They're like the flagship Nike. Oh, yeah, this is awesome. Like, yeah, Oregon's cool. I'll get on board with Oregon because I don't have a team. And before you know it, there's probably random Oregon fans in like Idaho or Delaware.
Be curious to see if UCLA sells out their allotment of tickets to the game on November 2nd here.
I'm going to say no.
Probably the diehard UCLA fan has been to Memorial Stadium once or twice. It's November 2nd. Might be a little bit chilly.
Yep.
Now it's going to be 70 that you said that.
Now, when Oregon plays here for the first time, or Washington, or even USC, you won't ask this question.
See, I remember...
And USC, when USC was last here, about 16, 17 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They had... it might have been also they became a national program, so people around here became USC fans because it was at the height of Pete Carroll and championships. Yep. But they also brought a lot of people. A lot of people came from Los Angeles, California,
their band
or around the country that were SC fans because they wanted to see a game in Memorial Stadium.
Yep.
So I think UCLA selling out their allotment. If you're looking for tickets, you're like, maybe I can get a seat way up in the corner, or right there down in the corner. maybe the UCLA game would be for you.
Well, and I think if you have
it's not sold out yet
in your program,
technically.
By the way, we're making our way to the UNI game. There was I think there's this notion too, if you have, and this is why I say USC probably found some other fans, not just transplants and what have you, but when you have a generational type talent like Reggie Bush was, again, there's the cool factor. There's the, I'm going to get a number 5 USC jersey because that dude is amazing. Watching him as a human highlight reel. So you gain fans that way. I honestly can say, because I've even seen a couple USC fans in Nebraska. I don't necessarily know if I've seen a lot of Washington fans. Now, I remember when Paul Homer from Millard North went to Washington, there was some people that were paying attention to Washington and rooting for them either off to the side on top of Nebraska or, hey, I'm going to follow them. I cannot, for the life of me, think of anybody I know that has ever been a UCLA fan.
Angus McClure's parents.
I'll take your word on that one.
Former Nebraska assistant who wanted so badly to get a kid from Nebraska to go to UCLA. He was almost PJ Fleck epic of the pursuit of a Nebraska kid.
Yeah. I honestly, I don't, between living here, Columbus, traveling around, being around younger people from coaching and then even covering high school sports a while back, you usually see the most, the random jersey at some point. I can honestly, I always saw a lot of North Carolina, a lot of people are North Carolina fans, Kansas fans. You'd get the Iowa Staters, which made more sense. But I've never seen a UCLA representation at all. That's the one place that I'm pretty confident that reach is probably sectioned there in LA, unless you have now moved. You are a UCLA alum and you've moved. I just don't think they've ever been the team of ooh, like that.
You want to go to a Big Ten game? Hold on. You could get UCLA tickets. You could be sitting in the UCLA section.
In the section, just take it over. Wear whatever you want to wear.
UCLA may hire fans from here to sit and wear their gear. All right. Jimmy's got an update coming up next. Coming up at 7:30, Joey Kaufman, Oregon?
No, he is with the Columbus Dispatch, Ohio State.
Yeah. We will talk about Ryan Day on the hot seat. Also, they're not my most fascinating team at the Big Ten to kick off. Share that a little bit later. That's a team that was not very far from Ohio State in the preseason rankings. And speaking of that, when we come back after the update, not a lot of people batted an eye about where Nebraska was in the preseason. Is this one of the rare times that reality meets expectation when looking at the preseason for Nebraska? We'll dive into that topic a little bit later. Sam McEwen from Indianapolis, Matt LePay, the voice of the Wisconsin Badgers. Who has a more likely bump in year 2, Matt Rule or Luke Fickell? Both have a history. BC, Matt Verzal, and Andy Kendi, all to join us on a loaded football show. We didn't think the offseason was over. It's getting close. It's getting close, and it's okay. It's okay. It feels like football. Smells like football. Looks like football. Eat a football. Do a football. Be football.
Whoa. Coach used
Just
to
go
say,
with it. He's rolling.
My coach used to say when we looked very disorganized that we looked like we were doing something to a football.
I don't think you can say that nowadays.
No, you can't.
Jimmy's got an update next.
The Storm Chasers opened a 6-game series at St. Paul beginning tonight at 7:07. The big story, the Royals are good. Yes, they are. They beat most hated rival Arizona 10-4 last night at the K. Bobby Witt Jr. falls a single short of the cycle. Salvador Perez and Hunter Renfroe hit a couple of piss missiles. It's their 4th straight victory. And they're just 4 back of first-place Cleveland. You can hear Nick sweating. Witt tripled in the first inning, doubled in the third, drilled a 3-run homer to deep left center in the 4th to get the hard part out of the way. But then he was hit by a fighting snake reliever, which led to a fracas in which Salvador Perez was ready to kick Arizona manager Torey Lovello's ass. My money would have been on Salvi. Anyway, LeBron James scored 8 points and wrapped them around steals, rebounds, and all that stuff as the Americans beat the Germans 92-88. He finished with 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. Joel Embiid at 15, 8, and 5 assists. Bigger story, congratulations to Gary's Miami Heat as Pele Larson broke a tie by scoring from the lane in overtime to give Miami a 120-118 victory over the Memphis Grizzlies to hand the Heat their first NBA Summer League championship.
Hey, we've come up short before.
All right.
Like it's, Miami or Golden State have won the championship. Just arbitrarily last night. Yeah. And what I think is the greatest Summer League game ever, they just decided that we're going to play to 120.
120, yeah.
Hey,
at least it didn't end in free throws.
Rules. Target score rather than a clock.
Hey, and we are in the summer of the Elam ending because the TBT is going on.
That is true. And that's pretty much what it was last night.
Speaking of the TBT, because I've gone down the rabbit hole of watching these games.
It is July.
We have no. It's not just a July thing, Jimmy. We have a weakness. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. We have a weakness for nostalgia.
Oh.
Like
totally.
To watch former players.
Oh, yeah.
Or to watch former games on YouTube.
Yep.
Like
guilty.
It's a weakness. I'm guilty as well. Nostalgia will get me every time.
I told you guys I still
Except
watch
with throwback jerseys.
Told you guys I still watch the 2016 Game 7 until the rain delay. You'd think they won
after the rain delay.
Yeah, you'd think they'd won that. I watch some old Masters.
Really? Because the 2013 NBA Finals end with 28.2 seconds to go in Game 6. I'm like, all right, time for bed.
Yep. There are moments where I'm like, oh gosh,
you.
I think they had them right there. Well, I'm just going to end it right there.
It was the
I'm
highest.
pretend in my head that they did have them.
It was the highest scoring game in championship history. Just the second one to go into overtime. The Lakers 110-98 victory over Portland. 7 years ago had the previous record. Just a year before, the Bulls defeated the Timberwolves 84-82 in the other that reached overtime. But this is interesting. The NBA's Board of Governors approved the league's 11-year media rights deal with Disney, NBC, Amazon Prime Video at its meeting in Las Vegas. Warner Brothers received all 3 contracts Wednesday, which started the 5-day clock for whenever it wanted to match. This is TNT. The new deals, collectively worth $76 billion, will begin at the 25-26 season. They include a game being aired or streamed nationally every night during the season. The point is, TNT is saying they're going to match Amazon's package. It sounds dirty. The package would have games on Thursday night after it's done carrying NFL games. Its other nights are Friday and Saturday. TNT would likely carry games on Thursday, with the other nights being streamed on Max. An NBA spokesperson said the league is reviewing the matching offer from Turner, his parent company. Amazon Prime Video did not comment on Warner Brothers' intention to match. It is expected that the NBA would announce the finality of the media deal sometime this week. That means that Inside the NBA might not be going away. Stay tuned. Finally, got to end positive. Just got to set the tone for the day. One of the greatest Americans, Snoop Dogg, will be among the torchbearers carrying the Olympic flame in the final stretch before the opening ceremony of the Olympics on Friday. He will carry the torch through the streets of Saint-Denis, the northern Paris suburb that is the home to the Stade de France Olympic Stadium. Snoop, who is also contributing to NBC's coverage of the games, hey, I'm sold, is better known in the sports world for Snoop Youth Football League. Everyone can pour themselves a little gin and juice. His championship game, by the way, called the Snooper Bowl. I knew this. The identity of the person who will light the Olympic cauldron on the night of the opening ceremony is secret, with less than a dozen people in the know. It has been said that the person who will light the cauldron on Friday was not yet aware they'd been selected. Could it be Zidane? Could Zidane headbutt someone when he does it? Tony Parker?
You just said that Snoop is everywhere and needs to be everywhere, needed to be part of the Nathan's hot dog eating contest and everything else.
I'm in.
My God.
He's going to Lincoln again.
He's going to be carrying the torch. I mean, it's Snoop. We're not even talking about the Olympics in L.A.
Could Snoop save the ACC?
I think so.
Maybe Snoop could have the talk show.
Now, maybe Snoop, because he did have a partial connection to UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he comes to the UCLA-Nebraska game?
But he had a connection to USC
Yeah,
back in the day.
remember during their run, he was always on the sideline with Will Ferrell. It was always a Will Ferrell and Snoop, and then Snoop was at practices.
He's in the 30 for 30.
But didn't his kid commit to UCLA?
I don't know.
Colin says, no way UCLA sells out their ticket allotment. They have road games at Hawaii, at LSU, at Penn State. One would think those destinations for the hardcore football fan, all 10 of them for UCLA would come before Lincoln. A lot of money to spend to keep traveling to all of them. That is right.
And Lincoln's nice if you've never been to see
I
games.
mean, if you're a UCLA fan, if you do have some cash, this is a pretty cool year. You get to go to Death Valley. You get to go to State College. You can come to Memorial Stadium. You probably pass on Hawaii because they're playing in Northwestern type stadium.
Yes.
I mean,
plus you live in California.
You go to two valleys, Happy and Death.
If you live in California, more than likely you've already been to Hawaii.
Yes, I would assume so. Yeah, that's a nothing trip. But yeah, you go to Happy and Death Valley. My gosh, that's rare.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that.
There's also, so while nostalgia is like a weakness, it's like a human weakness, and it's okay to admit your weaknesses. There is also the part of the human appeal of fame and popularity. Like LeBron carrying the American flag.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fame and popularity. That's a human appeal.
Yes.
To have him do it. He is not, by the way, he's not the face of American sports. He just happens to be a guy that has saved some embarrassment for the USA basketball team in two little exhibitions the last two times out.
Mm-hmm. He's rejuvenated. I think people
rejuvenated, or it's quite simple. He's 39 years old, and it's the last time for him to win anything.
That's true. And
he won't win another thing, but he could win a gold medal. So I can see why he is balls to the walls and doing what he is doing.
Yesterday, 80 called him 45. I guess you're 45 in NBA years when you're 39 and you're balling like that. But yeah, I was like, come on, man, that's your teammate. He's called him 45 years old. He's like, she's doing this at 45.
Good on him. He can win another gold. It's his last time to win anything. I can see why he wants to ball out.
You don't think he and Bronny will be hoisting a title together?
They won't even make the playoffs.
I think they will. I think they'll add to their roster. They'll make
the play-in.
I mean, remember we have the play-in game.
Oh, and
don't forget about that.
True.
In-season tournament.
There is. Yeah, there's a chance it could be an in-season champion.
Well, people forget they won the in-season tournament last year. They are the defending in-season champions.
Mm-hmm.
My question about the
Is
USA.
the banner going up?
My question about the USA. They did put a little banner up.
It's like a little one.
Little tiny baby.
Well,
banner.
I don't think you could make it the same size as all of the other championship banners.
What is that up there?
Is that a hanky?
Oh, you know what it is.
Did they have to move Kobe's 8 aside to put that?
They snuck it in there.
Why is
Cream's coming down?
So I'm asking two guys that probably have not watched any of the USA exhibition games.
Oh, just highlights.
I've heard about them.
Why isn't Halliburton playing?
I don't know. He's pretty good too. Is he injured?
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
He's not. He's on the bench.
Okay. Is he just they're just going to use him for the games that actually matter?
They have some issues with some of the rotations, and I think what he does well would help them. Just curious as I'm watching them beat Germany yesterday. But it's exhibition. We're about to the real thing, and then we'll get excited. And remember that 92 was a long time ago.
Well, and Steph isn't shooting very well.
I know.
Right? So you got that part of it that's kind of missing in the equation as well. I don't know. So you're saying you're not worried, though, with the close calls?
It's exhibition.
They'll be fine.
Just saying.
They're bored.
I mean, come on.
Just do a little walkthrough.
Last time you got upset on a March 16th spring training game in Sunrise, you're like, oh, man, starter didn't go 3 innings.
Watching a couple called strike threes, ABs. Doesn't always sit well with me.
But I do get the appeal of like USA basketball after the real dream team. You either want the USA to crush somebody, or you're like, hey, it's as close.
Yeah, make it entertaining.
Like you're not you're a fringe basketball guy.
Yes.
So you're an in between. Like if you hear that the U.S. is crushing a team, you're probably going to tune in.
Yeah.
Or if you hear that it's close, you're like, oh, I got to tune in.
Yeah.
But if it's like, hey, the U.S. is winning by 12, you're like, I'll wait for another day.
Mm-hmm.
Red, white, and blue all the way.
Yeah, you got me pegged. Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
Oh, I think that's kind of what it is. That's kind of what USA basketball is if you were like a fringe basketball fan.
Yeah. And there's the star power and knowing everybody that's on that team and knowing like how good it is, and you're getting the best of the NBA. So that part of it is always going to be appealing. But yeah, if there's just an absolute route where you're watching essentially highlight after highlight. Yeah, that's appealing. But, as in sports fans, whether it's basketball or any other sport, we like a little drama.
Somebody
If
likes
there's
to
going
be
to be some
Nebraska,
drama,
somebody has to be Pacific.
I'm always a big fan of upsets, but not when it has to do with my country. I don't like my country being upset. We've been upset too long. Upset at other things. So yeah, I would I would prefer the former though. I'd prefer a lot of blowouts. That would make me very happy.
Speaking of blowouts, so yesterday all the media polls came out. My sphere of my talking circle, nobody was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe they Nebraska should have been 5th. Why are they 8th?" Or they're overrated. That's a very popular thing. You know how other fan bases might be like, "Oh man, Nebraska might have got this right." You didn't hear a lot of overrated.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, "Oh, okay, this rule thing. Kellen DeBoer went from 11 to 14. Venables went from 6 to 10. The year 2 is real. Fickle has done it. Rule has done it." This might be one of the rare years of late where expectations and reality are almost the same for Nebraska football. Because there have been times where the expectations have been way high when they should have been adjusted.
Yeah.
And the reality is you're a 5-win team, but the expectation is you're going to win 8-9 games. There have been a lot more of those of late. Or the expectation from an athletic director in 2019 is we just got to get to 6.
Mm-hmm.
When the reality was that was going to be a challenge to get to 6. And so it was a little bit of a gap there. I don't think this year there is much gap between the expectation and the reality. If your expectation, whether it be inside or outside, is in the 8-9 range, the reality is Nebraska is going to win 7, 8, or 9 football games this year. And they're almost exactly the same. And I don't recall this close of expectation and reality in a while.
And just using the poll as a measuring stick here, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday of where you could essentially interchange a couple of those spots and nothing would be earth-shattering by the end of the season. For instance, if Nebraska finished 7th and Wisconsin finished 8th, or Wisconsin finished 6th, USC finished 7th, Nebraska finished 8th. There's that interchangeable element to this. But I look at the teams that in just the Cleveland.com poll that are behind Nebraska. Okay, Rutgers getting a big jump at number 9. That would be a great season for them and for what Greg Schiano's building there. But you look at Washington, that I think a lot of people agreed between what you lost from personnel, but also as a coaching staff, sitting there at number 10 is not, oh, come on, they're getting completely disrespected. And then you get into the Marylands, Minnesotas, Illinois, go on and on and on. It's interesting, as I was lining up someone from Wisconsin. I had gotten into a Twitter thread from someone from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel that was looking at Nebraska's recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
And they had mentioned Peter Zach because Wisconsin was also looking at Peter Zach. And this actually surprised me that it was a journalist that covers recruiting for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel that had mentioned, man, that is a huge get for Nebraska. I don't know if people want to admit this or not, but Rule is building something there. And that came from someone who covers Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. So again, just to use as an example where Wisconsin, just in a poll in the current day, is pitted one spot ahead of Nebraska. But I think there's recognition of how Nebraska is building their roster. So I thought that example alone was interesting, where you would think typically be like, Nebraska's in the top 10 of a 18-team conference. When are we going to learn that they've got to be able to prove it before? You just don't hear that as much.
So I'll tell you, I think, and a lot of it has to do with Rule. I mean, I think Rule is really respected in the business, and he carries himself well. He's not taking shots at other programs.
Yeah.
I think he loves the game of football. He loves football people. They can all relate. And he's a grinder. He's also a guy that had terrible misfortune in Carolina. And so he was labeled as a loser. Okay, so he's gone through it. He hasn't always, he didn't wake up and all of a sudden he was on third base. I'll give you an example of why I think Nebraska made the right hire for Nebraska. and the reaction of other schools. And that's a good point about the recruiting, because by the way, that kid is a dude.
I enjoyed watching
he's a good
this film.
thing.
Yeah.
I also am I'm out on crystal balls. I'll have to explain that to Schaefer. I think
Mario or actual crystal balls?
That's what I
crystal
thought.
balls.
Okay.
I think
What do you got against their family?
I'm out on crystal balls. Okay. I think crystal balls are bad for kids. But back to, so for example, and I know this for a fact, when Scott Frost was hired, when it was moving forward like he was going to be hired, there was a former offensive coordinator at Iowa, along with his dad. I won't name names. They said, "Ooh, that's a good hire," and that sentiment lasted for about a month and a half. And they're like, "Nope, this is danger walking the wrong way." And so then it was, okay, we've seen your true colors, and that's where it started. Some of the, Nebraska was catching strays from Iowa City. This go around, I think football people respect football people that treat the game like it's supposed to be treated, and they're authentic. Like Rule is completely authentic.
Yeah.
Rule has never come in and boasted about what Nebraska is. He's been very honest. So I think people that are in the sport can appreciate that instead of being a blowhard. And I do around the coaching circles and other programs going, yeah, I can see it. And that's a good observation about a recruiting guy looking at a player from North Dakota, of all places. Number one player in North Dakota. Nebraska hasn't gotten a North Dakota guy since Quali in 2009. Is that they would go, ooh, that's a good pickup, an under the radar pickup. So that's why you don't hear, oh my God, it's another season of Nebraska being overrated. That's a good sign. Now you got 4 months to prove people correctly.
Yes.
Or you're going to fall on your face. But it is wild in the sport of college football how much of the year two thing is real. I mentioned DeBoer. I mentioned Brent Venables. Even of all people, and he slipped back in year three, Shane Beamer. Shane Beamer, his first year at Carolina, their USC, won 7 games. In 2022, you know who his OC was?
Oh, Satterfield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They won 8 games and they were inside of the top 25. So the year two thing is real.
Yeah.
It's just how much of the year two thing happens in Lincoln. Like, what is 5 to 7 the reasonable jump? Is 5 to 8? I mean, 5 to 9, even if you think Nebraska should have won 7-8 last year, that still is a hell of a jump.
Yeah.
Because why they didn't win 7 to 8 last year is what you have to fix to get them to go from 5 to 8 or even 9.
Yeah. And it's a year that I do think if Nebraska were to say, even go 6-6, that I think that there is a consensus amongst people who cover the Big Ten, at least the old Big Ten, maybe this is a little more new to the West Coast schools, that they would actually legitimately be surprised, as opposed to
surprised negatively.
Yes.
Yeah.
As opposed to same old Nebraska. I don't know why we continue to give them the vote of confidence in the preseason. I think, and to your point, and I think other aspects of this team, based on not only how Rule goes about it, how it just seems like, and this term has been used many, many times, of adults in the room. And I think people in the Big Ten that knew previous coaching staffs would acknowledge that as well, that the way that they're doing their business is more conducive to winning football games and having a sustained success, as opposed to, you might be a flash in the pan. You might, get lightning in a bottle once, but is your model sustainable? That I think if they'd failed to win 7 games, that people who cover Penn State, people who even cover Iowa, people who cover Wisconsin, people who cover Ohio State would say, wow, I'm actually surprised they didn't win more, because I really like what they have going there. Again, it probably does, to your point, go back to basically game respecting game, or professionals respecting professionals in the business. But I think also you look at what they return on defense, what you return on the offensive line. There is substance to the idea that there is a jump there. And then you factor in the more, from a betting standpoint and what the lines will be, your tougher stretch of the season comes in the back end, as opposed to a manageable start to the season. So a lot of those factors in, I think people are saying, this isn't just smoke, or just, it's our annual tradition where we overhype Nebraska, that between Rule, what they have built, what their schedule at least allows them to have the opportunity to do, I would say that 5 to 8 as opposed to that 5 to 7 range.
Nebraska is tomorrow. We're going to talk to Joey Kaufman from the Columbus Post-Dispatch, or the Columbus Dispatch coming up here in a little bit on Ohio State. 3-day event, so they've expanded a day with the 4 teams. I hope the Big Ten beats their chest. I said it yesterday in a little rant. The Big Ten needs to start acting like the Big Ten. Okay, football is the end-all, be-all, and act like it. Act like it. You have a story to tell. You are a beast. You have the defending champion. You have the most money. Okay? Start acting like it. But this is what you could do to make your media days better. Limit podium time. Okay, because sometimes guys are up there, and even coaches that get no questions, got 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then after about 8 minutes, you're like,
yeah, we're good.
Also, you know what I would love? So I'm pro Big Ten. I know I've changed. I used to be an SEC guy. I am pro Big Ten. I would love to see the Big Ten do something different when it comes to who's at media days. You already know, well, there's 54 players. How many quarterbacks?
Let me look at my list here.
I think it might be 5.
Yeah, I was going to say 6, but yeah, you might be right.
But I mean, come on. This is a conference that last year had 8 teams from a 14-team league that were 90th or worst in scoring offense, including 2 of the worst 3 in America.
Yeah, should your quarterback be there?
Why don't they bring the coordinators?
I actually like that idea too.
I would almost want to talk to the coordinators more than some players.
Yeah.
It'd be completely different. I don't think it's ever happened unless a coordinator is filling in for a head coach.
Right. From the standpoint of what you get from media days when it comes to what we're privy to throughout the season, where the coordinators speak, a couple days of a DC and then an OC, and then you might get a position guy.
In some places, they don't speak at all.
Mm-hmm. I think that's actually some of the best stuff you get. I really do, especially when it has to do with the development of a certain player, the emergence of a certain player, maybe the regression of a certain player. Not saying that coordinators are extremely honest and open and will answer everything with hard-hitting information, but it definitely is a different perspective. Like student athletes, I think more than anything, the best interactions that I think you have with student athletes at these events are when their sense of humor comes out, where you can kind of mess with them a little bit. You can maybe get them to do an imitation of Jim Harbaugh if that suits you well. Or
will that be in the Connor Stallions? 16-20 the zone got in trouble last year with Michigan.
They're like, it already started off to a very auspicious start. But I think when it does come to a lot of think about it, not just Nebraska too, of, hey, we'd like to hear from maybe a Glenn Thomas, or we'd like to hear from a Tony White.
Can you imagine Chip Kelly being
That's
there
what I was
today?
just going to say, Chip Kelly being there. And not only the type of offense that you have and that you're in the lab with, but that UCLA team that you were just head coaching now in the Big Ten. Like what, so
Eric Bieniemy would be there.
Absolutely. So I think there are names for sure that you recognize, but I think also a lot of the storylines for some of these teams, you're probably getting more information from coordinators than you actually are from the student athletes. It's not a bad idea.
Be different, Big Ten. All right. But when Tony Petitti speaks today, man, put the hammer down. Let's go.
Right as we get off the air.
Don't be like, oh man, Jim Phillips, you nice guy yesterday. No, screw it. You're trying to destroy the ACC.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he couldn't cut it in the Big Ten with Northwestern. That's why he's at the ACC.
You know what? Hey, we only have a couple of teams that we want out of your conference. What are you going to do with the scraps there, Jim?
Well, really, the last time we heard Tony Petitti talk, and by the way, he'll talk at 10 a.m. today, kick everything off, was essentially about Michigan. I mean, at least the most notable statement or conversation that he had before the Big Ten championship game was about Michigan. And so Tony Petitti coming in has, in a similar way, was always considered to kind of be like a Brett Yormark type of guy, where he's more of an innovator. He's more of he's been a part of the TV deals. His knowledge is not strictly football, but actually some baseball in there. So there is new perspective when it comes to Tony Petitti. And now, given the fact that the Big Ten is in the position that they're in from a revenue standpoint, now with the bigger conference, knowing that you're at the power table, I would agree. Whatever that looks like, you need to act as such.
All right, coming up, we'll talk some Ohio State football. Joey Kaufman will join us. Ryan Day speaks today. 59-8, hot seat. The guy that is 19-8, hot seat.
Yeah,
they'll both be at media days, but Ohio State is there today. We'll talk about the Buckeyes, who have 8 guys that are on the preseason All Big Ten teams, offense and defense. By the way, USC 0. Last time that happened. Joey Kaufman from Columbus will join us next. It's Mornings with Sharp and Handley and Jimmy on 1620 The Zone. Hey, the Lindley Clothing annual sidewalk sale continues today. And I mean, well, when they open. But it is so hot, as people have found out, you're going to want to be there when they open today. Because all spring and summer menswear, still 50 to 70% off original price. And those David Donahue dress shirts that we keep talking about, if you're watching me on TV, hello, 20 to 50% off. They're nice, they're comfortable. You know what? They breathe. Like a lot of other clothes at Lindley Clothing. Their sidewalk sale, you're going to want to get there. 132nd and Dodge in the Linden Market. I know you're going to love what you're going to find. They got top-notch customer service. They know you by name, and they know their product. Okay, they're not just a warehouse. They go individual service to make sure that you find the best for you, and you're going to find the best deals right now on their annual sidewalk sale. 50 to 70% off original price on all spring and summer menswear and those David Donahue dress shirts. 20 to 50% off. 132nd and West Dodge in the Linden Market. That's where you'll find Lindley Clothing's annual sidewalk sale. All right, Big Ten Media Days start. For some, the offseason is over. Some, the offseason never begins. The season right around the corner as we welcome in from the Columbus Dispatch covering the Ohio State Buckeyes, Joey Kaufman. Good morning, Joey. Welcome to 1620 The Zone in Omaha.
Thanks for having me on this morning.
Hey, you're probably, as you write about this every day, and you know what the beat entails, and especially the passion of Ohio State, you're probably ready just to get the season started. But how is, with everything that is discussed about Ohio State, an incredible roster, the addition of Chip Kelly, Ryan Day supposedly on the hot seat, even though everybody else in America would take that record, how is this team built to handle all of everything that's going on when people are going to say, man, Ohio State, you haven't been back to Lucas Oil in December since 2020. You should be there this year. You should do this. You should do this. You should do this. How are they built to handle all of that stuff?
As you said, I mean, the expectations for this year are certainly sky high. National championship or bust has been sort of a common refrain, even among those in the program. But these sorts of expectations aren't exactly new for Ohio State either, because you look back a couple of years ago, it was C.J. Stroud's last season with the program. That was just in 2022. That was a national championship opportunity because you had a potential all-time great quarterback, as you've seen in the NFL, the success he's had. So I think there are always these moments, and even in Ryan Day's tenure, where it feels like they need to capitalize on it. And this year, I think, is really sort of in the similar vein as a lot of years, where you have a team that's going to be preseason 2, 3, 4, and it's going to be have sort of that burden of expectations.
Is there a feeling, because I saw you write about this as well, of the amount of season tickets that have been sold for the first time in the last, 15 years? Is there a feeling amongst the Ohio State fan base that, look, there's always an expectation for Ohio State football, and we know that here in Lincoln, but that this could very well be one of those teams that you're going to look back, if they are able to fulfill what is expected, that this could be one of those generational or one of those very rare Ohio State title type teams where you're like, damn, that everything about them, this is must see. We cannot miss out on seeing this particular team.
I think people have a larger appetite for sort of getting to the top of the mountain again, because this year is 10 years since they last won a national championship. They have not won the conference since 2020. Last time they beat Michigan was 2019, Ryan Day's first year. So a lot of the benchmarks that Ohio State fans would use for a successful season, beating Michigan, winning the Big Ten, winning the national championship, but especially those first two have not been accomplished now in several years. So I think there's sort of a collective starvation among the fan base. Even it's sort of I think probably a lot of other programs would sort of laugh at, oh my gosh, you haven't won the conference in 4 years. But to a lot of Ohio State fans, that's sort of how it feels. It's sort of an unusual drought for them, because typically about every other year they are winning the Big Ten, and they had a stretch there from 17 to 20 where they were in Indianapolis every December and winning the league. So I think that certainly adds to the expectations, and probably makes this year a little more different, is because it's been a few years.
Nebraska beat Ohio State at the end of October, so another trip to Columbus. Where will, and one of the additions, the many additions in the offseason, whether they be out of the portal or freshmen, is Chip Kelly. Joey, where will Chip Kelly make the biggest difference on game day for Ohio State?
I think it does a couple things, and you can look at it. Chip Kelly's help on game day, Chip Kelly's help Sunday through Friday, because his addition is important in the week as well, because it has allowed Ryan Day to take a step back and take a more CEO type approach to running the program. He had sort of had that dual responsibility of handling play calling, being the head coach ever since he took over for Urban Meyer in 2019. And that, I think, balancing act had proven more and more difficult in this age of roster management, the transfer portal, NIL, and just there was so much on his plate. So bringing in somebody of Chip Kelly's stature was going to be important for that, and taking stuff off Ryan's plate. And even if it was Bill O'Brien, it would have been a similar scenario. Now, I think where Chip really helps them on Saturdays is just his ability to establish teams that can run the ball, which has not been Ohio State's strength in recent years. They've had great quarterbacks. They've had great wide receivers. All you have to do is watch the NFL draft in April, and you'll see Ohio State wide receivers go off the board. They've been able to pass the ball well in recent years, but it's been several years now since it feels like they've been able to really sort of impose their will running the ball. You see it a lot in those short yard situations where it's 3rd and 1, and maybe with the talent Ohio State has, they should be able to push the ball and get over to get that first down, but they have not been able to do that.
I want to ask you also about Chip Kelly when it comes to just the quarterback room itself. One, what the overall feel is for Will Howard, but also his influence on that room where essentially you had everybody stay at Ohio State, which was crazy given the amount of guys that they have in that quarterback room. How much of just Chip Kelly also impacted guys deciding to stick around?
I think that was certainly a factor. You are going to get coached and developed by somebody who has been around the sport with his type of acumen. I think as far as why so many of those players stayed, I think it was interesting to watch really after spring practice. The thought was maybe one of them would leave. It's unusual to keep 5 scholarship quarterbacks. I think something to keep in mind is none of them are in situations where their eligibility is due to expire. You have 2 quarterbacks in there who are 2 true freshmen, Julian Thane and Aaron Nolan. You have another in Lincoln Keenholz who's a redshirt freshman. Devin Brown's going to be a redshirt sophomore. So a lot of them, 3 out of the 5 have 4 years or so to play college football. So I think that creates a situation where it was not like somebody was a junior with 2 years of eligibility where they have to play right now. Yeah. And I think what the luxury then Chip Kelly is, okay, I don't have to leave right now. My situation is not such where I need to find someone to play right now because I will not be able to play college football past 2026. These guys can stay, develop for another year or so, compete for the Ohio State job maybe in a year, and if not, then they can leave with some tutelage from Chip Kelly. So I think it's a good situation for them, even if they don't.
Joey Kaufman,
starting this year.
Joey Kaufman from the Columbus Dispatch joining us. You can follow on Joey, who covers Ohio State, on Twitter at Joey R. Kaufman. I envision Brian Hartline standing at a conveyor belt, and as a 5-star wide receiver comes by, he plucks him off the conveyor belt, drops him in Columbus, and then he sees an all-league guy, picks him, and drops him in Columbus. Joey, this is a chance for you just to go, wow, because I do. I'm going to use the word friggin' here. How friggin' good is that wide receiver room for Ohio State in 2024?
We're going to see because they do. I mean, the expectation is they're just going to reload there. It's funny because you lose Marvin Harrison Jr., who was a total superstar, number 3 pick in the draft. There was in the Cardinals, somebody with just really as good and as complete as they've had at that position in recent years. And now they have somebody in Jeremiah Smith who's going to be in the mix. He's the 5-star freshman from South Florida, and they typically have not had to rely on true freshmen to start right away. But he looked the part in spring. He's tall, he's lean, he's strong. Just looks like a really advanced for his age as a freshman. Then you have Emeka Ibuka coming back, who was a 1,000-yard receiver 2 years ago. Battled through some injuries last year, but they have a strong collection of receivers, and it speaks to the way Brian Hartline has recruited and developed that you can lose Marvin Harrison Jr. And there has just not been a lot of talk this season about how do you replace Marvin Harrison because they just are loaded at that spot with talent.
I know we spent a lot of time talking about the offense. Defensively, though, as you talked about those teams that were constantly in Lucas Oil Stadium, the Big Ten championship game, that were national champion contenders. You know, we know of the Boses, we know of the great players that have come through as of late too. This defense, especially up front, when you look at what they have, you compare those to some of these better defensive teams that we've seen at Ohio State. Where does this one, at least going into this season, compare in your opinion?
The unique thing about this group is that they're just so experienced. This is now their 3rd year in Jim Knowles' system, and for a lot of these guys, they've been with him along every step of the way, with the exception of Caleb Downs, the All-America transfer from Alabama at safety. Every other guy is a returner. Every other guy in that group is a junior or senior, so it's really experienced, and that type of group I think is going to be interesting to watch because they had the learning curve for Jim Knowles' defense was such that they were very creative in year one. They sort of pulled back the reins a little bit last year and were a little more vanilla at times, and I think that helped them and really allowed them to take a leap, and it was a big reason why they didn't give up the big plays and the explosive that sort of did them in late 22 and the loss to Michigan, then the loss to Georgia in the college football playoff semifinal. Last year they were simplified. And now, because of all that experience, I think it'll be interesting to watch, see if there's sort of another tool or another wrench that Jim Knowles has to sort of throw at teams this year with a veteran group with a lot of upperclassmen. Will they get more creative? Will they introduce new stuff? Will they be better about sort of getting havoc and creating turnovers? Because they were really good last year. They did not give up big plays. You look at the sort of the statistically total defense, score defense, as good as anybody in the country, but they were not the defense that was maybe going to create big plays in their own right. And just a little bit, I think it'll be worth watching with all that sort of talent back, what Jim Knowles, who's a really smart play caller, does with all that.
Joey, we opened the segment in a way joking about the notion of Ryan Day being on the hot seat. But again, with these expectations, with the roster, with the coaching staff and what they have, if this thing does not end in, say, a college football semifinal or worse, what is the feel for assuming that there wasn't any major run of injuries, what is the legitimate feel for Ryan Day if this wasn't to come to the expectation?
I think beating Michigan is going to be probably one of the more important things for him this year, just in terms of keeping people in Columbus happy. As they say, all politics is local, and I think that certainly applies in this situation where if he can get back on track in that rivalry game, I think it gets some of the pressure off. I think people are going to have to probably adjust their expectations a little bit this year, and they're trying to maybe sort of figure things out in this new college football world with the expanded Big Ten and a college football playoff that will require 3 wins. So I don't exactly have a great feel, and I don't know if the fan base does, for what's the proper benchmark for the Ohio State coach. I think certainly getting into the playoff every year feels like that is certainly the starting point, but what's the level of progression in the playoff that keeps people satisfied? That sort of remains to be seen. But I do feel like beating Michigan and maybe even finishing atop the Big Ten is going to be important for him, just to keep people satisfied, because that game still matters a lot to people in Ohio.
It'll be a fascinating year. Joey, as always, we appreciate it. Enjoy Indianapolis, and we'll see you at the end of October.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Joey Kaufman from the Columbus Dispatch. Akron, Western Michigan by Marshall at Michigan State. Then Iowa at home. And I don't know if you know this or not, Nick, but Iowa could be a dark horse team for the playoff. But the mere fact is the last 5 games that Iowa's played against ranked teams, they've been outscored 170 to 24. Then they go to Oregon, October 12th. And then that long trip back from Eugene to Columbus, Ohio. Ohio State's going to have to take a week off. And then Nebraska's there on October 26th.
It's
could you have a 7-0 Nebraska and a 6-0 Ohio State on October 26th, playing at high noon in Columbus, Ohio?
I put more faith in the Ohio State side of it, although that game in Eugene is going to be massive. Might be one of 2 that those 2 teams play this season. I'm trying to wrap my head around, if that were the case, how that would be promoted, how that type of game would be promoted. Because think about it, in 2016, Nebraska was that close in overtime of Wisconsin of going into Columbus, Ohio with an undefeated, with an 8-0 record, going up against an undefeated Ohio State team as well. We've been close to that. It's possible. I wouldn't count on it. If I were to say out of one of those 2 teams, and this is the confidence that I put in Ohio State, if one of those 2 teams is more likely to be undefeated going into it, it's Ohio State, even though they have Oregon.
I've heard more people, projecting. Now, Ohio State is really good, but looking at records or like schedules, excuse me, a lot of Nebraska's schedule early. Look at Iowa. A lot of their schedule. Love Iowa. Missouri. Look at the Missouri schedule. Love Missouri. This is Ohio State's schedule post the Nebraska game. At Penn State, Purdue, Northwestern at Wrigley, Indiana, Michigan. Isn't that a schedule to go 11-1 at minimum?
Yep.
I think we'll figure out what the magic number is in the Big Ten and the SEC to secure yourself in the playoff if you're not playing in your conference championship game. Is it 9? Is it 10? Is it 11? Because if you're 12-0, you're in.
Well, yeah.
You don't even have to have a discussion like that.
It feels, I know the number for between the Big Ten and the SEC has always been thrown out of 9 is at least going to make you a big part of the conversation. But that's, I mean, think about, you're right. The schedules for some of these teams matter, that if you've got a log jam at some, couple handful of 9-win teams, then obviously then you're pushing that thing over to 10. And the great separator between who's playing in the Big Ten championship game. Well, those two teams are likely in. Obviously the winner's in, and your runner-up is most likely in, probably is definitely in. And then that team that if you think 3 get in, if you think 4 get in, do you have multiple 10-win teams in there behind the teams that are playing the Big Ten championship?
This is a rare year that Iowa and Ohio State, or Iowa and Nebraska both play Ohio State in the same year.
Yeah. And I know Iowa fans, because you brought up the record with Iowa versus top 25 teams or top 10 teams. What year was it when they had the alternate uniforms and they just beat the crap? Was that 16?
That was the Woodshed over in Iowa City.
I'm trying to remember what year that was, though.
18? It was one of Urban Meyer's last years.
Okay. And I mean, they just smoked them. So I know Iowa fans will always hold out hope for that type of showing. I don't think you're doing that to this Ohio State team.
Iowa fans should be excited. It's only the 7th time since 2006 you played Ohio State. Jesus. Nebraska fans should be excited. This is the 8th time Nebraska's played Ohio State since 2012.
They're becoming rivals.
Uncanny how that works, doesn't it, with scheduling? But when you are given a schedule where you avoid the big boys, you don't make excuses.
Yeah.
You play the games and you take advantage of it because more than likely your next year, i.e. Nebraska, is going to be tougher. When you are handed a schedule that is manageable to keep your head above water, you better take advantage of it.
Right. Absolutely, 100%.
And don't sit there and go, yeah, we won 10 games. All right? Winning is hard. We have to learn that. Winning is hard. So I'm going to leave it at that. It's my little tip.
It's a good tip.
TED Talks.
It is good
Sam McEwen's going to come up in a little bit from Indianapolis, where a lot of our brethren that are there are not able to get into Lucas Oil Stadium.
Doors are locked right now?
Yes. I am noticing fellow friends that do shows in Nebraska are doing shows from outside of the stadium because unless you're ESPN, they are not letting you into Big Ten Media Days yet.
Oh.
Yeah, that would have thrown a wrench into our plans.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. All right. So Sam
tailgate party.
Sam McEwen from his bed at the Hilton will join us in just a bit on 1620 The Zone. All right, to wrap up the hour, Sam McEwen of the World Herald is going to join us here in a little bit. We had a lot of stuff to talk about with Sam. Nebraska speaks tomorrow. Jimmy, as a dog owner, I had this thinking last night as I got up in the middle of the night as an old man to go pee. Had a couple of cravings yesterday, and I'm not even pregnant.
No.
I had a craving for Pizza Hut pizza from the 90s.
Oh, bring back the Bigfoot. Somebody, please.
Hey, people don't realize this.
The Bigfoot.
Oh, hell yes.
The Bigfoot.
Hey, they had a lot of different things. People don't realize how important Pizza Hut has been in America. There have been times in America where we have fallen down, but Pizza Hut has been there to get us back up.
Preach.
Especially at the sit-down video games.
Yes.
The lunch buffet.
RBI.
But I had a
buffet.
craving for a 90s Pizza Hut pizza.
Pepperoni.
And it got me to think as I was urinating about 2:30 this morning.
I did that then too.
Is the other thing that is two things about Pizza Hut. One, I already told you because of the red cup that I stole.
Yeah. The red plastic.
With Pepsi in it.
People, just bear with me. Things taste better out of that red plastic cup that you would get at Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'm going to start
Doesn't
crying
matter
over here.
what you put in there. Also, this might have been the biggest accomplishment ever of Pizza Hut. Like of all the things that Pizza Hut has done.
The mini basketball.
That's
Ooh,
important.
the Final Four basketball.
Yeah, the Final Four basketball.
I've been to the original Pizza Hut in Wichita, Kansas. Do you guys understand? And maybe it explains a lot in our country how important Pizza Hut was when it came to literacy.
Oh, yeah. Book it.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Book it parties. You got your little mini pizzas.
How come people do not bring that
That's why I
up
learned to read.
as one of the great things in this country that helped us was the Book It program with Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Oh, Book It was fantastic. Every time we got the option or the opportunity for that too, and you knew what was at the end of the road.
Some
It was
might
a free
say
pizza.
that Pizza Hut's personal pan pizza changed America. I'm telling you, the Book It program, you got both ends of the deal.
Yeah.
And we learned how to read. You know what? Look what happened now. They don't have the Book It program.
We don't read.
I know a 3-year-old doesn't know how to read.
Yeah.
What? He reads.
By the time I was 3, I was reading box scores.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. By
and
3, I was reading sporting
think about
news,
this.
back pages.
It should be maybe in one of the upcoming debates too, because we're in an election year where you
Pizza
have
Hut rated.
literacy and feeding the hungry all coming together in one perfect part of what Pizza Hut provided with literacy.
We may be a
so many
nation.
different ways to put literacy at the forefront of topics in education, but also when it comes to feeding people too. I mean, Pizza Hut had this solved.
That's a great point.
But some of the best content for the show comes at 2:30 when I got to get up to go to the bathroom.
That's called prep.
So not only the craving for a 90s Pizza Hut pizza.
Yeah.
Also, Jimmy, have you ever thought about this?
Probably have.
And maybe because you are a dog owner and in the middle of the night, do you sometimes wish that dogs had hands?
Yeah.
So
and
that
could
they could open up the door themselves
Yes.
and go out and then come back in?
Yes.
I'm not a dog owner, but I thought about it, and I thought of you while I was peeing at 2:30 this morning.
Thank you.
Boy, steady stream too. Man, I must be doing something well.
Good job.
Yeah.
Our,
Way to hydrate. Everything's working.
Our dog sometimes when it gets a little antsy, if it notices the door is like if there's a little bit of light coming from the other side and wants to see what's going on out there, yeah, you'll get a little bit of that just edginess. And that's a perfect example when it's like, I just wish you could reach up and open the door yourself.
Why don't dogs have
and go out
hands?
there.
That's a question that I'm going to ponder for the rest of the day.
I think you're going to have to ask the big guy upstairs. I think only he can answer that.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the boss. I was like, wait, what?
That's how he made him.
I think we have a female. That's
Yeah, we have a female boss. Yeah.
I'm not talking about that.
Okay.
We can ask her. I don't
I'm talking
think
about the
she'll
highest
know.
of all powers, if you believe in that.
Women have a lot of power.
That's true too.
Look at that. Sam McEwen.
But yes, on the 90s pizza, Gary. Hell yes.
Hey, now it's not the current Pizza Hut.
No.
Yeah.
But the 90s Pizza Hut pizza.
Yeah, the greasy pan crust.
Take me back to 1990.
I thought I was pregnant.
When it came out in the little cast iron plate,
Yes.
and you knew
They
you,
sometimes
you
had the
ended your
spatula
game
for you.
and you ran right out there and you probably refilled your red cup.
Saw that
Some of the best
cheese.
Mountain Dews I've ever had came out of that red cup.
People are saying, don't worry about dogs with hands. Just install a doggy door.
Yeah, but we live in Skunktown. That could be dangerous.
Yeah, I don't like things coming into my house. I lived in a house a while back that had a mice infestation.
Oh.
That was not pleasant. So I'd rather...
Are they blind?
I don't know what they were, but they were there. There was more than three of them. There's more than three of them I could tell you as well.
Did one of them look like Kelly Pfeiffer? 801. I had to. It's been a while. I like Kelly. We have a good relationship. He daps me up courtside.
That's good.
Now he'll.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm going a little bit more forceful.
Sam McEwen from Indianapolis coming up next.
Halftime brought to you by Omaha Whiskey Fest 2024, the largest celebration of whiskey in the region, coming your way September 28th.
All right, Big Ten talking season kicks off in a couple of hours with the commissioner of the Big Ten, his State of the Union. And then 6 teams come, then 6 tomorrow and 6 on Thursday. And Sam McEwen and the great crew from the World Herald will be there for it. He joins us now from Indianapolis. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning. I'm not in Indianapolis yet. We're on our way there.
All right.
Where are you at?
We're in Nebraska. We're driving there today.
It's road tripping this thing.
Okay, are we gonna drive it all at once, or are we gonna stop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, we're driving.
All right.
But hey, it's a quiet day. Unless you think we need to say something, and I hope he does, because they need to wake that event up.
Okay.
Hey,
yeah.
I gave some suggestions earlier.
USC and UCLA.
Yeah, I gave some suggestions earlier. We'll talk off air. So let's start there, because you wrote about it this weekend. I mean, there's 54 players are going to be there, only 5 quarterbacks. Last year was not a great year for the league in terms of offense. Got the 4 new schools. You got a story to tell. But when it starts today officially at 10 a.m., Sam, in 2024, right now, before games are played, what is the identity of the Big Ten when it comes to football?
Well, I mean, I think it's still, the 10 polls of Michigan and Ohio State, with the intrigue of the new of the West Coast 4 coming in. I think that's the identity of the league at this point. It remains that way until somebody changes it. And maybe Penn State can do that. Maybe Iowa. Maybe one of these West Coast teams can do that. But the league is very well known for the game after Thanksgiving and those 2 teams, and that's what it's become. And I think if you were to ask people, tell me about Big Ten football, I think they'd say Michigan, Ohio State, that game, Jim Harbaugh. Oh yeah. Oh, by the way, he left. So he's not there anymore. And BTN, bad games on BTN, and that's a lot of what it's been. And it's not a fun league. They got to find a way to score more points. And I don't know if that's a conversation that's had league-wide among the officials, among the people in the room, among the coaches. But they've got to find a way to make the league more interesting in terms of a point standpoint, and not turn everything into a 9-6, gruel fest.
I feel like this conversation's brought up a lot with us locally of where Nebraska is, but even nationally of how certain blue bloods, when they are able to revisit those days of glory, or at least to a point that they're relevant on the football field. As far as what you just said right there, how big of these next few years for Nebraska would that be for the Big Ten?
Huge. It'd be really important. If Nebraska was able to get good again, that's another team that you can talk about. And one of the challenges with the Big Ten is a lot of these teams just haven't been very good historically. I mean, Wisconsin's been good historically over the last 30 years. They have a brand. Iowa's been pretty good. They have a brand. But what's Illinois' brand? What's Indiana's brand? What's Maryland's brand? What's Rutgers' brand? They don't have a brand. They're just teams that happen to exist, and they happen to exist in the Big Ten. And I think that's one of the challenges: is the teams that have history have to start playing like they have history. And Nebraska's one of those teams. So is Penn State. So are other teams. But there's a lot of fodder in the Big Ten, and a lot of those teams just have not emerged on a consistent basis to ever challenge Ohio State and Michigan. They're just too content to be who they are, and I think that'll be something worth watching. Auburn has Auburn won a national championship? Yeah, they won in 2010. Mm-hmm. But Auburn's been up and down and all around over the last 40 years, right? But they're never content. Yep. They're not content. Purdue's content. Very content. So, I think that's the difference between the SEC and the Big Ten.
Hey, when you brought up brand and Big Ten Media Days, I think back to the famous Bill Moose appearances in Chicago, where we would surround him in a small, dark hallway, and he would just riff on the season. And I go back to 2019, which is one of his famous appearances with the media, because he said the hype is good because this is Nebraska and we have a brand. It was a really weird thing because at the same time, the Rhonda Revelle situation was going on. So Moose was trying to handle everything, and he was really psyched for football. And he said, we really need to get to 6. And you could just feel the air go boom. And then we all went and asked Scott because he was up next. And you know what that conversation was like. Troy Dannon has been pretty quiet. He'll be in Indianapolis, and he has let it be known that Nebraska needs to start winning for a lot of things to fall in place with the stadium and money. If Troy Dannon said, I'll play the role of Bill Moose in 2019, in 2024, you asked me the question, I will say we really need to get to blank wins. He won't do that, but if he said it, what number do you think he would say?
7, I think, is a good number. I don't think it's just 6, because I think you have to put more progress out there than that. And I think there is I don't know that there's an official clock, but there's a clock on Nebraska. You just can't, they can't just sort of meander along for 5 more years. They got to get good. I think everybody kind of knows that too. Like, Nebraska has joined the league. They were pretty good initially, and they've really wandered the desert for the last 7 or 8 years. And their enrollment isn't what they want it to be. And, the university leadership has changed a ton. And I can just imagine Big Ten people kind of looking around each other and going, what is this university doing in this league, other than benefiting from being a part of it? There needs to be, and I think this is a conversation. Like, they need to win games, and the university needs to get back in the AAU. Like, this is go time for Nebraska. And so I think there's a sense of urgency and an understanding that these things have to get resolved in the next 3 to 5 years. My hunch is that a lot of what Dannon's going to talk about is 1890, which he will love talking about, and roster sizes and all these, all these sort of third rail issues that are popular with the Nebraska media because they can either play upon how great Nebraska is or how put upon Nebraska is. But the reality is, Nebraska has to figure out a way to win, and win a lot, not just 7, and 7 this year and 6 the year after. No, it's 7. If it's 7 this year, it's 10 next year. Like, this is not. There's no longer this sense of, hey, however long it takes, or we'll figure it out, or hey, we still got the fans. Even the fan thing is going to run out in about 5 years. Like, the fans are going to get tired of showing up, and they're going to have to figure it out. So, there's urgency within the program and within the athletic department for sure.
Sam, I brought this up to Gary, and you're gonna be inundated with this here the next 48 hours at Big Ten Media Days. It was a thing I came across from one of the writers with the Wisconsin State Journal, talking about where Nebraska is as far as building their, not only the roster now, but in the future. And they'd mentioned the commitment to Cade Peterzak. And it was one of the writers who said, whether you like it or not, this is a big get for Nebraska. Matt Rule is really building something there. Coming from Wisconsin, coming from an old division peer, as some would like to think could have been a Nebraska rival, hearing that I thought was interesting, because I feel like that narrative, and Gary brought this up too, as far as the overall professionals respecting the professionals. Is that a sentiment that you think is going to be somewhat echoed throughout Big Ten Media Days around the whole Nebraska story? Is just Matt Rule's overall leadership of this program being the best route for this program to see that success that we've just been talking about?
Yeah, I think he's very popular in coaching circles, and I think he strikes a good chord, a good tone. When he gets up in front of the media, he does a really nice job of explaining not only his vision, but the trajectory of the program and the people inside the program that make it valuable. I think that's all, again, valuable and good. And yes, that, recruiting is important. There was a story in The Athletic about Kansas City recruiting, and one of the Kansas City coaches, unnamed, said really nice things about Rule and said, hey, they're just doing it different. There's a 5-year ramp here that I think looks really good, of like building the program a different way. And he's a relationship builder and all the rest. There's still a sense of like, all right, all those things can be true now. For 60 minutes of clock time on Saturday, 12 Saturdays in the fall, how does the team perform?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how, not just, what are they doing off the field between January and September, but once the season begins, how are they winning the games that they expect to win? I mean, there's a run. There's a run in here, guys, where they're going to play Illinois, Indiana, Purdue, and Rutgers. I mean, if you are who you say you're going to be, then you're going to win all four of them, but you're going to win. You're going to at least win three.
Yep. What do you think, non-Evan Cooper? What do you think from either yourself representing local media or national media will be the toughest question that Rule will field?
I think he'll probably chew a little bit on the roster limit stuff and how Nebraska is going to address and go about that, and then he's going to have to navigate the inevitable questions about Dylan Raiola without overhyping him, but. That's just simple as that. National reporters are going to want to ask about it. Local reporters might be begged off a little bit because, it's like, hey, you've asked that question before. Don't you know there's a quarterback competition? That kind of thing. The national reporters don't care. Like, they'll go in there and ask about the national story, which is Dylan Raiola. We'll see what happens. Raiola, sorry. Got to make for Dylan Raiola. I think there's that question. How do you navigate the question and somehow keep mentioning Danny Kalin and Heinrich Harper?
Yep.
He'll have to figure out how to do
that. Getting back to the expectation question, whether anyone wants to put a number or not, I feel like he's addressed it. The year two, the jump, he's been very open about they're a 5-win team until they prove otherwise. But if you get into numbers, if someone were to ask, hey, what number would you consider to be a good season in year two? Do you think that's an uncomfortable question for Matt Rule?
No, because you can just answer that. If we take care of business, the wins will take care of themselves kind of answer. I mean, I think that's not a challenging. I mean, I think he can handle that question pretty easily. I'm sure he'll say, I think we can win a lot of games. I think we can win all of our games. Now we got to go out and do it, which is, by the way, true.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, anytime you're able to say a true thing, that's probably a good thing. I think more of the challenges within the program are questions, and they're not necessarily challenging questions, is, tell me how you're going to run the football as many times as you plan on running it without running it back and you gaining the yards you think you're going to gain.
Yeah.
Right. How are you going to do that? Tell me how you're going to just drop back and throw the ball, not scheme it up and, turn your back to the defense and dial up a 37-yard play action pass. But how are you just going to put the ball back in his hands and let him deal and throw the ball, read the defense and throw it? How are you going to use quick game? Those aren't questions that are actually hard for Matt Rule to answer because, he'll explain it. But those are the key questions to the team. Like how do you move the ball? Like what are you gonna do to do that? Because last year they really struggled to figure those things out for the majority of the season. And if they do that again, if they average 18 points again, the chances of them being much better than 6-6 or 7-5 is very slim.
How close is the running back competition to being the guy that starts in the backfield against UTEP in less than 40 days?
From my perspective, Emmett Johnson's going to be the starter. But other people tell me, oh, no, it's going to be Gabe Irvin. So, Irvin's going to have to come back in camp and earn that. I think Emmett Johnson did a pretty good job toward the end of last season. And I think if you are who you want to be in the fourth quarter, that's when Gabe Irvin can take over a game.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to have somebody who can hit a hole and maybe catch the football out of the backfield. I think Emmett Johnson will be that guy. But you never know. I mean, Ramir Johnson might be a situational starter where you go out on the field and there he is. It's 1st and 10 and they decided to go out of the shotgun and Ramir Johnson's on the field. So, I still like Emmett Johnson will be the lead back, but there's a chance that Gabe Irvin is your fourth quarter guy and Ramir Johnson is your situational starter. Clearly it's going to be those three. if Dante Dowdell's able to push into that trio, all the better.
Real quickly, another guy I wanted to ask you about, just because he's been mentioned as of late, and it's a pretty important and exciting position group at wide receiver, Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda. His overall impact, if Nayor and Banks and even Jalen Lloyd have the type of years that everyone is penciling them and hoping that they will have, what is Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda's impact in your opinion?
He can run after the catch. But one of the best things he does is when he gets it, he can make a move and make something miss. I like to see him in the quick game. I think you can get him over the middle too and work in certain parts of the field. Not a bad deep receiver. I know obviously he caught the touchdown to start the 2022 season, but I like his yards after the catch ability. I do think he's got a role definitely within the team. And, Jamal Banks, I think they have a pretty good idea of what he's going to be for them. Isaiah, we'll find out. Nayor, we'll see. I think that's a guy that you can put on post routes that might draw double coverage and make life easier underneath.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he's going to have 55 catches. He could be a 27 catch guy and be a France Hardy type.
Yep.
For you. He can run. Nayor could really run. He's got great stride and speed. And then Lloyd, he had to become a more complete receiver, and everything I've heard is that he's done that.
Yep.
And so there's other things he can add to his repertoire. But I think Banks will be your number one. And then, from there, I think any one of three guys could be your number two. And on the right day, Alex Book will have the most catches because he'll be in the slot or whatever. So I think they feel pretty good about that position overall. They feel like they've got 5 or 6 guys there. And then you can use your Corey Barney as a deep threat or whatever you want to use it for. I think they have a pretty good room. At least they feel like they do.
Yep. They got guys that can track a football, which will help with a quarterback that has a big boy arm. Sam, safe travels with you and the crew. We appreciate it as always. Looking forward to your coverage tomorrow.
Hey, thanks a lot. Take care, guys.
Sam McCune of the World Herald. Tracking the football is a big deal. I said that during the spring, seeing the wide receivers. And if you have a big boy arm that can throw the ball up in the air 45, 50 yards downfield and not necessarily drop it into a breadbasket, but you have to have the timing, they got wide receivers. Like Banks will be really good at tracking a football. That's a quality that I don't think gets talked about enough. And that's why Jalen Lloyd's going to be the whole package before he's done at wide receiver. He's going to be everything you want out of a wide receiver. And he may play himself into getting NFL attention. When people see him on the field, the jump that he has made from the Iowa game last year, where you're like, God, they underutilized him, to what he'll be like at the start of this season is amazing. And it's kudos to him. He worked hard. His body looks different. I almost think he's faster, but he's learning the craft of a wide receiver. I think Jamal Banks joining that room, who is a pro wide receiver. Now, he might not be an NFL draft guy, but is a veteran pro wide receiver. They have learned to play the position, and that's going to be a huge asset, which the timing with a quarterback that can make throws in all 3 levels, that room's going to explode this year.
It's one of the main things that jumped out when Jamal Banks was on the radar is not only tracking, but tracking in the tightest of spaces too. You saw several either red zone opportunities or anything even from 30 yards out where he's finding the corner, he's placing his feet, he's still making the catch, he's still getting so all that part of it. But I mean, you bring up Jalen Lloyd again, and that work ethic is something that everybody talks about when it comes to Jalen Lloyd and where he's improving. But even in the spring game, you saw a little bit of that ability, more confident with what he was. Getting
Nick,
to the
he's getting an
football.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay. People told me that Malachi Coleman would be better than Jalen Lloyd. I only saw Malachi Coleman play twice in high school. I saw Jalen Lloyd play for 2 years. Okay, saw him play a lot of games. I said, people are sleeping on Jalen Lloyd. Jalen Lloyd is a better player than Malachi Coleman. How many of y'all out there said that coming into that recruiting class? Because that's reality. Okay? That shows one guy, shows another guy.
Yeah. And this is that year where you're already starting to see where it sounds like that momentum. And this isn't coming from just people that are I mean, you're hearing the coaches talk about this. And usually that first name that's brought up is the work that Jalen Lloyd has put in. And that goes all the way from the spring practices and post-spring and getting into the fall camp too.
I mean, the thing I appreciate, and this is they've coached these guys hard during the summer, and the train is moving. And there are going to be some guys that aren't getting on the train, that are just watching the train. Some people have ticket on that train. That's the best thing that can happen to Nebraska football. They're starting to separate guys of guys that are here for the gear, that are here to watch, okay, that just want to be part of the thing. And then there's others that want to be why this thing works.
Yep.
And that has been a push this summer. And it has helped some guys that just need the competition that is going to make them better. And Jalen Lloyd thrives in competition. And you will see in that wide receiver room with two guys that he's going to play with the majority of the time that will open up spots for him on the field. Watch out. Buy if you haven't bought the stock, go down right now to Equitable Bank and buy all of the Jalen Lloyd stock that you can buy. All right, Matt Lepay, the fine voice of the Wisconsin Badgers. He will join us next on 1620 The Zone. All right, Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis. They will include, yes, the Wisconsin Badgers. Year 2 of Luke Fickell. Some changes with staff, some new players. Same old Wisconsin. Interesting schedule. The Fine, one of the great voices in college athletics, Matt LePay, joins us now on 1620 The Zone. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
Hey, what if I would have told you, as you got into as the voice of the Badgers about 30 years ago, that, Matt, as you begin your 30th year for football, there's going to be a school named Penn State, Nebraska, USC, UCLA. Those are going to be Big Ten games. You would have said what?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. I would have looked at you like you had two heads probably. I was talking to somebody yesterday because I noticed that Wisconsin's picked 7th, I guess, in the Cleveland.com poll. They said, well, that's upper third. Oh, close. Back when way back when the Big Ten actually had 10 schools, that's like being picked 3rd, maybe 4th. It's not all bad, but yeah, it's a whole new world. And as I've told people down here in numerous speaking events or whatever, it's going to take some getting used to, especially for those of us who've been around for a while. Maybe a younger fan, like, okay, fine, and you grow with it. I think for the not so younger fan, it's a jolt, but hopefully something that they'll find enjoyable just because you get to see some different teams roll through here, or your team goes out there and just it shakes it up a little bit and hopefully keeps everything as fresh as possible.
Well, Matt, I go back to when Nebraska joined the Big Ten. Wisconsin, in my opinion, was the model of consistency and success. There just wasn't many seasons where there were less than 9 wins, and at some occasions 10 or 11. But with all of that, there were coaching transitions that took place too. When you think about now, because I think it's an interesting point, you mentioned 7th, which is in the top third of this new Big Ten. If Wisconsin is to have that type of sustained success, where maybe not necessarily even challenging for the conference every year, but putting themselves into that 9-10 win boat where they're being discussed, maybe even for the college football playoff, what do you think the biggest challenge is now compared to what they saw in the previous 10 to 15 years?
It's such a different world. That's a Captain Obvious statement I just made there. But with resources, with NIL, budget, and I think we're still trying to figure out, or the powers that be are trying to figure out this time next year when there's revenue sharing, how is that divided? How much goes to football? How much goes to men's basketball and then Olympic sports? And everybody's trying to get a feel for what it's going to look like even at this time next year. But the resources are such a big part of it now. You still, I think if you're the Wisconsins of the world, you still have to hold out hope, and that it's still a culture developmental based program. And that was the thing with the Badgers, even though they were coaching transitions, from Barry Alvarez to Brett Bielema, philosophically, they were, lined up pretty well. Gary Anderson was here for just a couple of years. Then you had Paul Christ. You had guys who knew the landscape. So that I think helped keep the program, performing at a sustained high level. It's a different, the environment is so different right now. So I think, the resources are going to be a big part of it. You need buildings, you need renovated. They're working on a new indoor football facility here. They're raising money for that, and hopefully in the next couple of years that'll be up and running. All of that's really important, but I mean, let's face it, fellas, some of this now is more transactional than what it used to be.
So we roll into Madison last year, and we talked, and Wisconsin's 5-5. It had back-to-back weeks against Indiana Northwestern. We don't recognize Wisconsin, but then the game unfolds, and you go, man, that looks like depth taxes and Wisconsin football being what Wisconsin football should be. Transition year 1 for Luke Fickell, a lot of new things. What do you think is the biggest, or a couple of the biggest lessons that you think Coach Fickell learned last year, Matt, that will benefit them coming into this year with a more difficult schedule?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily lessons. I think you just learn the lay of the land, as I'm sure Matt Rule has at Nebraska after a year. You get in the weeds. You know what the university is about, what it values, this, that, and the other. And I think, Fickell, in a general sense, has a better grasp of that. It's just natural that he would going into year 2 as opposed to his first season. He's had an entire year now to evaluate the roster and personnel, and they've hit the portal very aggressively. They, in the area of linebackers, maybe is more than any other area. They've got guys with a little bit more length, with maybe a little bit more speed. They've been able to hit those areas. But I think from what Fickell has learned, maybe it's more important what the players have learned. The returning players, they know what he wants. They know how he wants it done. They know the intensity that he expects every day. If it's in the weight room, obviously on the practice field, so on and so forth. So there should be fewer surprises, and those guys, the returning players can help get the new guys, if they're freshmen or transfers, hey, here's what you need to expect. You need to be ready for this, this, and this. So, his record in year 2 at Cincinnati took a big jump. Maybe the circumstances were quite a bit different. I don't know what that's going to translate to here in terms of wins and losses, because the schedule is pretty interesting. I'll put it that way. But I do think he has established his way of doing things that maybe this time last year players might have been kind of leery, wondering what's going on. Now they have a much better idea of what to expect.
Gary mentioned some staff additions too. The Alex Grinch addition in the role he's at, I think, is massive for Wisconsin. And I know he was saddled a little bit with the USC defense declining, but it wasn't all bad at USC his first year with the turnover margin. What he was able to do in a short time at Oklahoma, as far as rushing defense, you pair him with Mike Tressel. You've got co-defensive coordinators now. What has been the impact early on, at least with what you're hearing and seeing from Alex Grinch on that staff?
Well, it's certainly been a help. I mean, Mike Tressel is the defensive coordinator, but someone with the experience of Alex Grinch is certainly it's a big plus. With the guys back there on the defensive side of the ball. It was interesting listening to Luke Fickell about this, and it could be about players, and it could also be about coaches. In specific with Alex Grinch, I mean, he's someone who has experienced a lot of success, and he's experienced some failure. Mm-hmm. He's seen a little bit of everything, and he's been a part of a little bit of everything as a coach, and that's okay. I mean, it's unrealistic to think you're going to just win and be great year after year after year. And we don't know all the circumstances out at USC. We know that the offenses have been prolific and the Heisman quarterbacks, and you think offense when you think of USC. You don't know what all went into the issues defensively. But he's a very, very experienced coach. So, I mean, he's not running the defense, but I'm sure Mike Tressel will continue to lean on him moving forward, as well as the other assistants on the staff. He's one of 4 newbies, and that's the one thing that I'm sure like the Huskers have gone through the same thing. But for the Badgers, you've got multiple position groups now. If you're a senior, if you're actually a guy who's been at the same school for 4 years, and there are those at Wisconsin, you could be playing for your 4th position coach. Yeah. That's the case in the offensive line, to name one area. So that's part of it too. About you need some stability. We'll have some of that here in these next couple 3 years.
Stability and staying healthy is, you lose a quarterback, lose a running back who was going to be paired with Braylon Allen. But one thing that emerged last year, and this is, again, we're talking about Wisconsin, is Will Pauling. I think Wisconsin's wide receiver room is really good. How does that pair with another new quarterback, Matt, and Tyler Van Dyke coming in from Miami?
Yeah, Pauling was interesting last year because he had, with an offense that put out the lowest points per game at Wisconsin in 2 decades, he had one of the most impressive individual seasons that Wisconsin receivers have ever had. And we know it's been a run-based program for years and years, but they've had guys like Chris Chambers and Lee Evans and more recently Quintez Cephas, and they've had Jared Abbrederis, they've Nick Toon. They've had some prolific receivers, and the year that Will Pauling had last year ranks among the best they've ever had at Wisconsin. They just the receiving group is, I think, really good. The question is there a game breaker? Is there someone who can stretch the field? And I would like to think the answer is yes with Pauling. Tretch Kekahuna Guy's a redshirt freshman, played toward the end of last season. He's got a quick, shifty nature to his game. Had a really good bowl game against LSU. I think he's someone who could be really exciting to watch, as well as guys like Bryson Green. Hopefully C.J. Williams can take a next step. He's in his second year at Wisconsin after transferring from USC. So I think it is a really good group of receivers. Then the question is, with Tyler Van Dyke now in a position to be the starting quarterback, Braden Locke still would like to have a little something to say about that. But Van Dyke is a guy like Grinch who has experienced a lot of success, as he did being the ACC Freshman of the Year at Miami 3 years ago. But he's experienced failure too. He's been beat up. He went through a stretch of too many interceptions. He got benched and then came back and finished pretty strong last year. So he, like Grinch, experienced a lot of really good times, but some not so good times as well. And again, Fickell goes back to that, saying that's not a bad thing. As a player who knows how to fight through the bad stretches. But as I said, I think Braden Locke started 3 games last year, played in a 4th, and someone who I think has a lot of potential as well. They think they've got a pretty good quarterback room right now, although where Tanner Mordecai could hurt defenses running the ball more, I think with this group, with Van Dyke and with Locke, they probably have to pick their spots a little bit more. Good arm, in the case of Van Dyke, a really good arm, but maybe not quite as nimble with the feet as Mordecai.
The identity for Wisconsin football forever, we know, has been what they do at the line of scrimmage. It was maybe the best way to describe it, Matt, and maybe you would describe it differently. Maybe the inconsistencies in run blocking, but they didn't give up a lot of sacks either. But you got a lot coming back on that side of it. What's their biggest challenge, or the area they need to make the biggest jump in year 2 under Phil Longo's offense?
Yeah, that was it was inconsistent last year without a doubt, and I think with the shift, the philosophical shift to this air raid type of offense, the lineman. I work with Mark Tauscher, who played at Wisconsin and is in the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame as an offensive lineman, and he said these guys are being asked to do different things from what they were under the previous staff. So there was an adjustment period there. They did go through some injuries as well. And they have a new position coach, A.J. Blazek, who came up from Vanderbilt. He played some college ball at Iowa. But the reviews on him have been outstanding through spring ball, and just a real positive, high energy kind of guy. So, but the consistency is the biggest thing here. And it's interesting to me, the last 2 games of the regular season, when Wisconsin beat the Huskers in overtime and then beat Minnesota. And they did it by running the ball a lot. Mm-hmm. And even in the Nebraska game, where the rushing totals were at best modest, but against a very good rush defense, Braylon Allen toughed through a painful injury, played in that game and ran hard. But at the end of that regular season, Luke Fickell said, "That's where I want to live." So they may call this the air raid, and they're going to need to throw it. You need to figure out how to hurt teams through the air, but I just keep going back. Fickell's a nose guard. That's what he played at Ohio State. He was a prolific high school wrestler. He loves to mix it up. So it's something that has stuck with me for his last several months, and it's going to be fascinating for me to see. Okay, can they run the ball consistently with Ches Belusi coming back? Toby Walker, the transfer from Oklahoma, that on paper looks like a pretty good 1-2 punch. But I'll be really curious to see the commitment to running the ball again at Wisconsin.
It's almost here. Matt, it's always great to hear your voice and talk Wisconsin football. Have a wonderful season, and we'll check in down the road.
All right, sounds good, guys. Take care.
That's one of the best in the Big Ten, Matt LePay. I think Wisconsin, I think they'll be back to a top 25 defense. The schedule's a little bit more difficult. Mm-hmm. So maybe 8 wins. I'm not ready to kick Wisconsin to the side because Luke Fickell learned. And if they don't have the key injuries last year, they probably find a way to win 8. Here's the biggest thing that has happened with Wisconsin is not necessarily the whole dynamic change of, we used to be a program that would run it efficiently in the top 10 running the ball, and now we're in the top 20 efficiently throwing the ball. It's the fact that Wisconsin went 24 straight years having an all Big Ten offensive lineman. They have not had an all Big Ten first team First team offensive lineman in 2 years. What do we say about Nebraska's run where all of a sudden it stopped? They stopped producing all
conference
Big 12 first team linemen.
Yeah.
Offensive linemen. 24 straight years. Death taxes and Wisconsin football. And the last 2 years hasn't happened. So what have you seen? It hasn't been the same Wisconsin.
In the inability, regardless of the philosophy, like Matt just said, the inability to run the football consistently. And a lot of what they did in some of the success they had running, we saw this in the Nebraska game, was what they got out of Tanner Mordecai and being able to extend plays and use his feet to hurt. It wasn't necessarily designed runs. And he's right. I mean, Tony Walker that guy's a bowling ball. And Ches Malusi, if he can stay healthy, and that's always the big if. I mean, it always seems like death taxes and a Ches Malusi injury, whether it's long-term or not. But you do have guys coming back from that offensive line that I think it's going to be interesting to see if stylistically they're more adapted to it, or if this is still going to be an uncomfortable system for the types of offensive linemen that they did recruit. Because all these guys, I know Brunner, the center, is a transfer, but that was still 2 years ago from Cincinnati, from Luke Fickell's college football playoff team. He's healthy, but he played one game in the last 2 years. Yeah. So there's still questions there, without question.
Hey, think about if this was not 4 teams coming into the Big Ten, so we don't have any divisions. You imagine if we still had the East and the West and we had 14 schools, you would say, boy, this is what the division was supposed to look like, that Iowa, Wisconsin, and Nebraska are all bunched together, and you could make a case that one of the 3 could win the division. Think about that if this was this year and there were still divisions.
Yeah, because I don't think USC, even if you brought in
no. So there are going to be divisions no matter what. There were going to be no divisions.
Right.
I'm talking just 14. Like next year is when they expand. This would be the last year of divisions. The West Division,
it would be.
It would look like what it was supposed to look like. Nebraska possibly holding up their end of the bargain. Iowa being Iowa. Wisconsin being Wisconsin. It'd be a fascinating race.
And
schedule would come into play.
You'd have Minnesota that supposedly is going to be a step down, where they, as we got towards the end of the division era, they were the ones that were always also adding themselves in the mix. And then there's like, well, you can never rule out Northwestern. But yeah, you're right. It would be those 3 teams of the way that we all envisioned that.
I imagine that'll be a conversation piece over the next 3 days about no divisions, because if they go to 20, which they are going to go to 20 eventually, they're going to have to go back to divisions or pods.
Yep.
But there also will be, for some programs, because once you hit that 8 spot and you go 9 and down, you fall out of contention. What are you playing for? In the past, you could still play for a division title.
Yep.
So there's hope.
Yeah.
You fall out of contention. What are you playing for? I imagine those from 9 on down schools will say, you know what? Maybe divisions aren't a bad thing.
Yeah.
But when they go to 20, they got to go back to divisions or probably pods. But I wonder if that'll come up with some coaches, or if Petiti will address not having divisions, because 18 is a lot.
It is, and it's just
18 on a list is a lot.
When you just look at how these things were typically separated by divisions of each team, but then you just see the amount of teams that are all right there, like, okay, climb that mountain. We'll see the 2 best here in a few months.
All right, let's play a little game here. This is what will Wisconsin's record be when they come to Memorial Stadium on the 23rd of November? Western Michigan, South Dakota, 3rd preseason in the MVC, if you're wondering, for all my FCS fans out there, all my Yotes. Alabama coincides with Camp Randall being able to sell alcohol, make a lot of money off the Gumps. At USC, Purdue, at Rutgers, at Northwestern, Penn State, at Iowa, by Oregon, in Madison, at Nebraska. So 3, 6, 9, 10 games before they get to Lincoln. Wisconsin's record will be?
I'm going to say they are going to be 5-4.
Okay.
Yep.
That count right? It was 10 games before then.
Yeah.
6-4. They'll be 6-4.
I'm sorry, 10 games before. Yeah, then I'm still going to give them 6-4. Then.
Playing better football.
They're going to be above. Yeah, 5-5. Still think they'll be above 500.
That'll be a good game.
Yeah.
Hopefully, a little warmer this time than the last time the Badgers were in Nebraska.
I mean, getting or the two biggest games on their schedule as far as competition, one non-conference, one in conference. If this does anything for you, truth be told, I think they'll be 0-2 in these games, but you do get Alabama at Camp Randall. You do get Oregon at Camp Randall. So at least when it does come to the strength of the schedule of what you have, your two most difficult opponents are in Wisconsin. In Oregon, that late in the season, hell, who knows?
You guys know that Wisconsin used to sell beer in their student union?
Oh, my gosh, that makes a lot of sense. It does. It does.
A lot of college kids go to the football game to sober up.
Well,
I know how that goes.
You can kind of say that about Nebraska, too. Not that there's beer sold at the student union, but you go to the game and you...
I don't know if the play on the field has anything to do with it.
A little bit. It's a sobering experience lately.
It's okay. I mean, stadium beers are expensive. Those beers they have in the streets in Madison, those are cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Those beers in the stadium are expensive. I don't think arrests are all of a sudden going to go up.
Oh, hell no. No,
but I was really surprised. I maybe it was just me and you're drinking in the stands. I thought they served beer at Camp Randall.
When you said that, and because I knew that I didn't realize we were already now to 16 schools. I thought there were still
the cool ones,
a handful of ones that had not crossed that path yet. Yeah, I thought Wisconsin was one of the first 6 to do it. I thought they were
in the nation.
Yeah. Yes.
Early 1900s.
It goes to show you the involvement of these students.
Had an email back a little bit ago in the Equitable Bank inbox about beer, and Memorial Stadium in Lincoln is going to be the last one. That will we be so Nebraska nice when there's alcohol sold at Memorial Stadium?
Yeah.
Just people know everybody's been to sporting events. Alcohol in stadiums is expensive.
Yes.
Okay. It doesn't mean they're not gonna pound beers before going in so they can go and buy $13 beers.
Right.
Us pro drinkers, we know.
You get one in the stadium and nurse it. Maybe one and a half.
Yeah, you might have 2. You might have one in the first.
Who am I saying? I'll probably have 3.
Dan will be asked about grass in the stadium and drinking beer.
Mm-hmm. Or grass in the stands, which is a different conversation.
Yeah. I don't know. Hey, baby steps. Pillin brought up having mobile gambling, sports betting. He's going to address it in January. And I thought, oh my God, what happened? Do I still live in Nebraska?
Does that fall under
going on?
Does that fall under the sin tax?
That's called progress.
Yeah, there's probably other people that have questions about the progress in the state.
I know.
But he brought that up, and I was like, Have you not seen what it's done for Iowa?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Jim Pellin for
a lot of good
FanDuel.
things.
Yeah, I don't think, Jimmy, I think you have to, I think it's going to be a ways away before we're just smoking in the stands.
Good to know. Man, those runs us would hit different.
Yeah, I think the Nebraska sponsored cannabis, the Delta 8.
Yeah.
I think a player that wears 8, all of a sudden there's a Delta 8 in your favorite cannabis store.
Yes.
I think we're a ways off from that. I can honestly
42?
say that.
Hey, we're still not that far removed from the Dare pledge during the spring game.
They don't do it anymore.
That would
right?
really throw that out too. That would never have a comeback.
Hey, Pizza Hut is, by the way, still trying to help with literacy. I don't think that we should all be drunk, fat, and stupid. Aaron in Papillion, he said, I know this about 45 minutes after the discussion, but I was driving in. Thank you for the email, the Equitable Bank inbox. Pizza Hut still does have Book It.
Okay.
I have a 1st and 4th grader, and they still get coupons for a pan pizza if they meet the reading goals each month. They don't have a sweet pen that you put stars on like we did back in the day. Oh, yeah.
Can't eat pens.
So we were way cooler. I agree, Aaron. And I think I had every mini basketball for the Final Four.
I did too.
Yep. 1990 was in an arena.
I couldn't wait for those to come
How
out.
great were those times?
Those were, almost like the college football game. Like the day you knew it was coming out, like Mom and Dad, we got to go to Pizza Hut. I need that. And then don't forget the Book It bookmarks. That's when you started your journey. Oh, I love the Book It bookmarks because I knew there was a pizza at the end of this road.
Can adults participate in this program for the pan pizza?
Yeah. I'll read some books.
I'm sure.
John says Northwestern will have a new stadium in 2 years. They'll be serving alcohol when they move into it. Nebraska won't have beer in the stadium until Osborne is no more. Well, could have happened sooner. Nick killed him last week.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Gio.
Northwestern will probably be some Chardonnay.
All apologies. Yeah, probably.
You're already drinking Memorial Stadium now. What does it matter? Okay.
I never have.
Why can't it just be cans? Don't need no taps. Just make canned beers. Have huge coolers like they did for the Garth Brooks concert.
I don't know, man. I still think that'd be a nightmare. Getting up and down.
It's the lines. You're right. The lines are what would be the worst.
Let's just turn it into NASCAR, man. Let's let people bring their own. Bring their own food. Bring their own drink.
Someone brought a cooler to Twisters.
Candlestick used to be like that.
Yeah.
You got your cooler.
I mean,
it gets
seriously,
checked.
You go to a NASCAR race and you can bring in whatever you want. Why don't they just turn that into you know what? As a thank you to the fans that have put up with some poor football, just bring your own. And you know what? As long as it fits comfortably under your seat.
Yes. Ooh, you know what?
As long as it's a clear cooler.
How about a BYOB game? Could be like the worst home game of the season. It's a BYOB. Oh, now we're talking.
They could try that out for the NIL practice.
Yes.
You pay $25.
BYOB.
The concession stands are not going to be open. Yep. It's bring your own.
Yes.
Listen to him.
And we will not exclude anything.
God, there'd be people bringing a picnic basket.
Oh, yeah.
A blanket. And
yep. Just like you see at the movie theaters now.
That prime rib.
Would you be for increasing your ticket price $5 if you could bring your own?
Yes.
What about 10?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Because that's covering one beer if you were to get one.
Jack the ticket price up $10. Fans can bring whatever they want.
Yep.
Drink, sodas, Coke.
Limit to your cooler size. Like you said, it has to fit in a certain spot. So it's going to have to go through a certain thing.
The little Playmate we used to use when we were kids.
Yeah. Doesn't matter what's in it. Except for, weapons.
Bring a Diet Coke, and when they're doing the Pepsi thing and they're scanning the crowd, show us your Pepsi. You hold up your Diet Coke. This is what winners drink.
Yep.
Losers, winners, losers, winners. Brian Christopherson, Matt Verzal, and Andy Kendi, all winners in our book, will join us in the last hour of Mornings with Sharp and Handley and Jimmy on 1620. Losers, winners, winners, losers. Check the facts. Since Coke left.
Yep.
When we stopped reading books and stopped doing Coke, Nebraska football.
And the Cowboys.
Context is very important on this conversation.
It's 1620, the zone it is. All right, a couple of things before we get to BC. Shout out to our friends at Nebraska Prospects.
Yeah.
Their 2027s won the Iowa Perfect Game Tournament. They had a great season, 38-5-1.
Mhm.
So congratulations to them. We're excited to see their progress and the amount of talent that Nebraska Prospects have and what their next go-around of gear is. Also,
Yes. I recognize those hats.
is there I don't even know where to start with this thing called disrespect.
Mhm.
The top 100 player poll is out. The players vote on the NFL.
Mhm. Uh-oh.
There is one of 8 players in the NFL that has 1,400 plus tackles, 30 plus sacks, 10 plus interceptions. Pretty good, right?
That's good, yeah.
Possible Hall of Famer?
Yeah.
Never has really gotten his proper respect from the national media. One of the best to ever do it. Loved around here. Levante David checks in at 99.
Mm-hmm.
If you know, you know. NFL players really should be ashamed of themselves. He barely made the list.
Yeah.
The guy could be getting the call to Canton, and he barely made the list. I know we might be a little biased around here, but I don't think the Buccaneers are. I don't think people that watch football know how good a player he is.
Agreed.
99th. They only have 100. He barely made it.
Yep. Zaire Franklin is 100. So if you're wondering who's around him, Cameron Hayward is 98th.
Well, Aaron Rodgers is on there too, so.
Yeah. Yeah, Gary, he is.
Yeah. Man, just go away. There's an athlete.
Yeah, Gary, I agree.
If there's an athlete that I have to vote off to just go away.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, you owe the Jets a Super Bowl. Don't go to Egypt. Go get them a Super Bowl.
Uh-huh.
No, go to Egypt. Stay there. Just a quarterback.
Isn't he supposed to be having his or I guess he would have already had it, right? His trip, his solitude, his ayahuasca trip.
He reported for camp today.
Yeah, but I mean that trip usually takes place in like midsummer. Doesn't it?
I don't think he did one of those.
Did he not do it?
I think he went to Egypt. That's why he missed OTAs.
Okay. Mm.
Overrated Jets. Overrated Jets.
Oh, I know.
But they have some good gear this year. We'll
They
say that.
do. I saw the throwbacks.
But you know what? There have been years where Nebraska's had a good alternate uniform, and BC's coming up next. All right, talking season upon us. First day of media days in about an hour. The Big Ten commissioner will kick it off. Nebraska, Iowa speak tomorrow. Brian Christopherson of Husker 24/7 speaks many words to us right now. Good morning, my friend.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you? Are you like over media days? You cover it because it's your job, or do you still get the butterflies in the morning before you get out of bed and you walk into Lucas Oil Stadium or
You're
a
have your
random
outfit
hotel
picked out from the night before
in Chicago or a hotel in Dallas?
There's people who actually work for a living, so if I'm driving to go talk about football with people, I consider that a blessing. That's how I always view it. Whenever you become a curmudgeon about stuff like that, it's like you got to shake yourself, be like, come on, man, this is easy stuff. So I think it's funny that we could maybe do the same thing we're doing in Indianapolis. All the Nebraska media are just going to go hang out around Matt Rule and the 3 Husker players, and we could do this on Vine Street or at a coffee shop in town. But it gets us out of the house and seeing new sights. And Brunch usually picks pretty good restaurants. He found a nice Mexican restaurant last year with some great salsa. We'll have to figure that one out again. Nice. So I'm happy. I'm not going to be a downer about it.
Who's the most fascinating team of the 18, you think? Or your personal? Who you think is the most fascinating team with what they have, what they could be, who they have?
I think Oregon probably most interesting just because I think they're actually one of the teams from the West Coast that can make some noise. USC, I think, is obviously everybody's intrigued with how they're going to respond to the shift to the Big Ten. And since they're on Nebraska's schedule, probably USC personally is more interesting just because you want to learn a little bit more about their roster and how they're sort of prepping for this league shift. So I'd say one of those two teams just because they're the new flavors, right? But maybe because of Nebraska's schedule situation, USC would be at the top for me.
Okay, and so you're going to have a chance to not only see Nebraska tomorrow, but also USC. Overall, when you look at the biggest storylines, and we've kind of teased this a little bit the last few weeks, BC, but Gary's brought this up, and I think that there's something to this about the Big Ten representing itself strong. If we were to say, hey, boy, the Big Ten really came out of Big Ten media days really in a strong manner, what would that mean to you? What do you feel the way the Big Ten should carry themselves now with 18 teams and a nice addition with Oregon and USC on top of that? How should they come away from Big Ten media days?
Yeah, it's a good question, Nick. I don't know how much you can get done on that front at media days, if I'm being honest. Like, I think it's something that gets everybody excited that, fall camp's around the corner. People like having it, I think, back home on their televisions in the background when the coaches pop up and they turn it up when their team's coach comes. And then sometimes there's one coach or somebody who says something that's a little off the guardrails or something that is a headline. But other than that, I don't know that there's anything from these 3 days where it's like, they can gain momentum toward the season or anything like that. I do think people will be curious, though, like how, Lincoln Riley talks about the challenge of switching leagues, or if he downplays it. I have a feeling he will downplay it from other stuff he said in the past. But I think it's very real. Like, I think Nebraska fans, probably more than any fan base, can speak of the test of switching leagues and a different style of football, where you have to kind of shift on the move.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think to a Nebraska fan, there's kind of an intrigue in that with these teams. Like UCLA, Brunson and I were just talking about it. I think that's a heck of a tough job for a first-year coach, trying to build that program up while shifting to this meat and potatoes league, where you're going to see right away by October, November, what you have to have in the trenches and exactly what it takes. And so I think that transition is very real and difficult. and sometimes underestimated by people who make it. So I'm interested, and I know this wasn't really answering your question, but just how those coaches sort of respond or are thinking about that process.
Because it is the Big Ten, and the Big Ten still does these types of Big Ten things, they don't have a media poll, and they put out a preseason honor list, which just dropped into the inbox. There is, has Jay Higgins of Iowa. It's littered with Michigan, Oregon, Ohio State players, one from Penn State, and a running back from Rutgers. And even in some of the media polls that were released yesterday, Nebraska doesn't have a rep on the first team offense, first team defense. If Nebraska at the end of the year was to have a first team all Big Ten representative on the offensive team, who would that be?
I could see one of the receivers popping out. It's a loaded. There's always good talent at receiver, so it's hard to do though. So that would be very challenging. But I do think there is some top end guys that Nebraska has at that receiver position. Whether you're talking about Banks or I kind of think Nair is going to burst onto the scene. So one of those guys could be an entry. If you wanted a wild card. It would be somebody on the O-line. It would be. I mean, I think it could be a Ben Scott or Bryce Benhart. The thing that you got to do, though, is you got to win like 10 games to do that. Like, you got to really be a 9 or 10 win team to probably go from, as you're pointing out, not having anybody who's getting much notice on some of this preseason stuff as far as all conference to, okay, you're like a first team guy. That's going to require like a 9-3 season or something like that. So Nebraska's just not getting the benefit of the doubt anymore, like they did for many years because of their win-loss record, and so it's going to be challenging. But I would say, like a Scott or a Benhart, if you wanted a real wild card, it'd be like if Thomas Fidone just like took off with a great quarterback play and they got the tight end suddenly involved, But I think you're talking about one of the receivers or an offensive lineman probably, or Dylan Raiola, right?
Yeah, now that you would probably be in a much different conversation if he was first team all Big Ten. I mean, we're probably talking about, have they winterized Memorial Stadium?
Exactly. Yeah, that would be that. That's why I threw it in at the end, kind of as a quip. But hey, I threw it in there, and we can just we can marinate on that.
We have it saved,
and you knew exactly where I was going next. That's why you brought him up, because he when I say he, Matt Rule, has been, I think, as good as you possibly can be when talking highly about a young, talented, true freshman, but also not putting the weight of the world or ridiculous expectations on him. He's managed that conversation so well. That's been amongst the local media. That's been, and it may, I guess to some extent, some of the national media as well, when he's done certain interviews with different guys. But now you're going to be into one of the biggest stories about this team being the most highly coveted recruit that they've ever had at the most important position. Any reason to think that Matt Rule goes a little bit more in on Dylan Raiola, or is it more of what we've heard from spring ball to today? I'm
sorry, you there?
Yep. Oh, did you cut?
Yeah, I cut out for just a second. I don't think he'll say much more than he has. Okay. He's been, but he said quite a bit, I think, in the fact that, like, even on that Joel Clapp podcast, like, he said something about, I think Raiola is going to be something people are going to know about after the end of this season. And I think he'll say something similar to that. What will be interesting sort of in the nuts and bolts is if he gets more into the timetable of when he wants to officially announce the QB thing. I don't know that he'll go there either, but this is the sort of stuff you pick at media days and see how much a coach is willing to say. But I think he's just going to tell national guys who ask about Raiola, it's a guy who's put his head down and gone to work, and he hasn't rested on his laurels of being a 5-star guy. He's moved on to the next chapter and earning the respect of his teammates, and we think he's got a lot of potential, and we're excited about him. And I don't think he'll back down from that, but he'll probably leave it about there. The nice thing that Nebraska has going for it is, as I've always said, the bar was so low from the quarterback play last year. That takes a little bit of the pressure off Dylan, I think. And I think some people who really know about the Husker program understand that. And also, I've said this with the indispensable list that we had and all that. Like, I think if Nebraska's top dudes on defense are really top dudes and all conference type players and make that a top 10 defense, that takes a lot of heat off of a Dylan too. He doesn't have to be Superman in his first year. And I think that's something that could be pointed out if you wanted to at this deal, but I don't know it'll be real interesting though. It always is like that cat and mouse of how much a coach wants to say about a young talent that everybody knows about, but it's the team game, and you want to sometimes leave some words unsaid before he gets on the field and takes that first snap. It's always an interesting dynamic.
Hey, we have ad nauseum talked about the jump in year 1 to year 2 with coaches and what Rule has done at previous stops. Give me a guy that transferred to Nebraska that is year 1 with Rule that will, as a player, you think make that quote unquote big jump in year 2 under this staff.
So he's a guy who just transferred in.
So I'll give you an example, like a Ben Scott. Rule is big on, if I'm going to take portal guys, I want to take guys that have at least 2 years. He doesn't take many guys that are just 1 year guys. Like a Banks is an exception, but he likes the 2 year guys because he always thinks in year 2 you're going to pop under his system. Who would be, and I may have just given you a Ben Scott because I know how highly you think of him, but a guy that you think in year 2 under Rule that he brought in will pop?
Well, Ben Scott's a good answer. I'm trying to think of the transfers they had last year, actually, off the cuff. But I just think all these guys, since they're all in their second year with Rule, you could go through almost the whole roster. And, like, Jalen Lloyd, I know, is not a transfer. I understand that. But his second year with Rule, and you talk about a player who I think Rule and his staff believed in more than others. Like, I really do believe that. Maybe not locally, but I think there's some people thought, man, he's a great track athlete. What's he going to do as a football player? Kind of raw and all that stuff. But I think he's a great example of how Rule staff sees. He's got all the traits and he's got the want to, and we get him here, and that can really take off in a second year. Jeremiah Charles would be another example. Obviously not a transfer guy either, but I'm thinking of these particular sort of guys that this staff really hones in on that have these traits where they're like, just give us time with them and they'll develop. We'll develop them. And that they believed in Jalen Lloyd, I think more than the mass audience did in some cases. And I think we're going to see that really take off this year. And I would have answered other transfers, but I was kind of blanking out on last year's class.
No, I probably should have asked it as guys that everybody gets their second year, who will pop the most? Because I think you will see, especially on defense,
MJ.
They're more comfortable, they understand the system, and they will take that jump. Like Tommy Hill, a year 2 jump under the tutelage of Rule's system and playing in a Tony White defense. He's a guy that, his ceiling is undetermined, in my opinion.
He's got to be good. And the other guy in that secondary that I'm really curious about is Deshaun Singleton, because just how he comes back from that injury. He was, to me, one of Nebraska's best defenders in the first month of last season. And he's a really impressive dude. Like, he just is sharp and gets things fast. And it didn't surprise me that he fit in really well with this staff right away. Like, I remember Rule had little meetings the first spring he was here with players, and in like 3 to 4 minutes with Deshaun Singleton, I remember he walked out and he told other coaches, is Deshaun Singleton going to be my new favorite player?
Yeah.
Like, he's got that sort of mindset. And so it's a really interesting dynamic in the secondary, because you got Singleton, you got Buford and Gifford and Hartzog, and there's like 5 or 6 guys who have actually been around some things for a while who you expect to be pretty good. How do they move those chess pieces around? And also then who steps up on that second line?
Yes, that's a great point.
We'll see if we get some clues about that. By the way, that tomorrow, like in the secondary, like where they want to move some pieces. I don't know if we will or not.
Hey, great stuff. Safe travels. We'll look forward to your coverage, and we'll talk next week on the eve of camp.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Hopefully, you didn't break up too much.
Oh, no.
We're driving through Missouri.
You were fine.
Oh.
You were fine. That's Brian Christopherson. What route are they going?
They're going through God's country right now.
In Missouri?
I don't know what God you're talking about.
In Missouri. Hopefully they stay in the Missouri side.
We're going to check in with Matt Verzal here in just a second. He's in Mankato. I think we're going to be able to connect with him. Steve Wolfong, while we were talking to BC, just dropped a little tweet on intel on David Sanders.
Oh.
David Sanders may be on campus this weekend in Lincoln, the 5-star offensive tackle. That happens. Stop what you're doing on August 17th because you may have something to watch. So Nebraska keeps hanging around in that recruitment. All right, Verz is coming up. We can connect with him. He's in Mankato. His nephew Max has had a great Northwoods League season, is up there. And so Verz is going to give us a scene setter. And then Andy Kendi, who, along with Lauren Michelson, is in Indianapolis. So he'll stop by as well before we turn it over to the Connor Happer Show on 1620 The Zone. All right, so a Oregon reporter, Chris Dion, from his hotel room, just tweeted out a picture of the huge inflatable Oregon duck that is floating down the White River in downtown Indy.
Oh. Staking your claim, marking your territory.
I never had that
U-boat.
Never had that stuff in the Big 12.
Nope. To reminisce, though.
Looks like the Penguins' little duckmobile in Batman Returns.
Well, you said this during the break, like just out of obvious, but also just in thought of, gosh, dang, there are a lot of teams in the Big Ten. When you look at the signage right behind the podium, because Tony Petitti will be speaking in 30 minutes to kick everything off, you just see the signage and the amount of teams there. It's like,
we got 18 teams.
This looks like a combined of two conferences here.
It's a little overstuffed.
A bit.
The overstuffed league that's coming to Peacock and CBS.
Here's a question for all the attendees. Would you rather have 2 days of 9 teams, or do you like this spread out over 3 days, but you get a little bit later start to the day? I think for me personally, I'd want just the 2 days if you had to cover the entire event from start to finish. You couldn't just pick the day of the team that you're covering. Like you had to do the entire thing. I'd still want 2 days. I'd want to go balls to the wall on that thing.
That would definitely increase the sense of urgency to answer questions. Get in, get out.
Yes. Come
on. We're trying to hook up with Verge. Verge said he'd call me right back. I hope he doesn't call my cell phone. So he calls the studio line.
Just put the speaker right there on the mic.
Does my non-radio friend not know that we have deadlines, we have breaks? I kid because I care.
Nah.
One thing from that I asked BC about the most fascinating team. I think, and I agree with him, it's USC. So Lincoln Riley's 19-8.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, whoa, what's going on? They don't have Caleb Williams. They are experiencing a brutal schedule. So they have to adjust. They also have 0 players on the first team offense and defense. We're talking about SC. Their most notable player, Zachariah Branch, who is the Jet Award winner, the returner, plays wide receiver, but he's most exciting in the return game.
He's fast.
They are preseason 6th. I am fascinated to see what happens with USC and what Lincoln Riley does because he's never faced something like this year. Now, by the end of the year, Millard Moss could be being talked about, and they have Bear Alexander on defense, but they don't have any household names. A household name in Grand Island and in Omaha, and now in Mankato is Matt Verzal. Good morning. How is that beautiful little Minnesota town treating you?
Hey, Sharpie. It was, man, there's this kind of hidden gem. But it's a super nice. It's bigger than I thought. Baseball field is awesome, but I think they share it with Bethany College. So no, it's been cool.
Are you doing any fishing out there? Are you a fisherman?
I don't think I will be doing any fishing, but I mean we've got all day today because the baseball. So last night was the home run derby.
Yeah,
and I think Major League Baseball should kind of look at this, but they had 9 players per side, and then 1 inning, or you get 1 at bat, right? Of course, stuff. But you have 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Hit as many as you want. You get 1 timeout.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have a National League team and an American League team, and then the team itself can win, and then each individual, the individual that hits the most home runs wins the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Now you're not rounds, and you're not.
Yeah.
So it was an individual attempt, but then also a team total. And it came down to the last at bat. So it was nice. It was pretty cool. It was kind of fun, and it took a little bit, but
did anybody go on a heater? Was there any where it's like this dude can't miss?
So if you hit back to back, you got an extra 30 seconds.
Okay.
Well, there was a kid that they forgot that he had hit back to back. He was the first batter, and they realized this in the last inning. So they owed him 30 seconds of time. He came up, and mind you, he had hit the last time he hit a baseball was an hour and a half ago.
Yeah.
He hit 5 out, I think, in 30 seconds.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you could tell once the BP pitcher hit it right, like found the seam, because that was what it was on. If your pitcher could hit a spot, you could hit a bunch of bombs.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a kid hit. I mean, it was exciting. It was kind of fun.
Talk about so the reason that you are up there, your nephew Max Butenbach has had an incredible summer playing in the Northwoods League for Wilmer. What's he say about this experience and what it's done for his game to ensure that he gets more at bats this upcoming year?
He goes, it's really cool to be here and you get to be a part of it. He was in the home run thing. He was the first hitter for his side of the league or whatever. And I'm watching it, and Max can hit the ball out, but Max is like a line drive, hitter. And they start chucking these things in there, and he is hitting just piss missiles into the gap. Like, he is hitting line drives that, like, little kids trying to catch the ball are getting out of the way of, but none of them will get over the fence. And so he hit a few out later, and he walks over, and I looked at his buddies as they're talking to him, and they're kind of laughing. And he kind of dabs him up. And one kid goes, "You just hit 900 for 2 minutes and 30 seconds." He's like, "No ball. Nobody could have caught any ball you hit, but none of them went out of the park." It's really cool. They got some stuff today. They're going to have some availability where they can kind of those things that you don't get exposure to, maybe if you don't do something like this, but they'll sit down and the All-Star game will like teach them about advisors and agents.
Okay.
Things to do like that. There are some scouts here, so I think there's a section of the day where they have accessibility to scout. So, if you never know if you're on somebody's radar, and maybe that person's here, they can say, "Hey, we're watching you." To me, I would not want to know if I was a good baseball player. I'd be like, "Oh, the Cubs are like, I'm Johnny Baseball. The Cubs are watching." Like, if he came to me at the Cubs scout and was like, "Hey, we're watching play," I'd, butthole puckered. I'd never hit a ball again. I'd be like, "Oh man."
Hey,
it is cool.
I was trying to figure this out earlier in the show. So, and I thought this is how they do that, but you might know this better since you're there. They do the All-Star a couple days, home run derby, then the All-Star game. And then is it the actual league championship this weekend? Is that how that works? Does it wrap up this weekend, or is there still another week or two of games being played?
Oh, no, they're still weak.
Okay.
They're still, they'll play, I think, the playoffs. So Wilmer, who Max plays for, won the first half.
Okay.
They were the first half champ of their whatever it is, division. And so now they'll have a couple more weeks. I think it's August. I think the playoffs start August 13th.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Maybe it was 10th. Maybe it start August 10th, but they're done August 15th.
Jeez.
That playoff goes fast. That playoff.
That is a summer league.
Well, hey, enjoy it. That is you're right. That the ballpark in Mankato is pretty unique. The old grandstand, the covered grandstand behind home plate.
That's cool.
It's a nice place.
I'll tell you, but they need to look into this. They poured 2 cement concrete, just like mini, I don't know, apartments out there.
Yeah.
The people that were out there were having a time. Like they had a patio deck, and I mean it was. But yeah.
That'd be cool. And you were telling me that I didn't know this, and pretty cool deal because I liked him when he was playing quarterback for you. Isaiah Ramsey's on the Minnesota State coaching staff.
He is. Yep.
Nice.
He is. I told him today. I said, "Hey, this game doesn't start till 7:30 at night, so I'm gonna need something to do during the day. So I'm just gonna come over for my free tour of Mankato State. So you just let me know what time I need to be over there." Isaiah, our old quarterback at he goes, "Are you serious?" He goes, "You're here?" I said, "Yeah." I said, he goes, I'm like, "What's up?" He goes, "I got to be here all day." He goes, "Yeah, so come over."
Oh,
Like,
awesome.
"Oh, cool." So
well, I'll be
it did bring back memories though of Coach.
Oh yeah, the Screaming Eagles.
Yes.
When you pull in, it says Minnesota State.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Hey, well, we'll be watching tonight. I hope Max does well. There may be a friend of mine in the baseball world that is one of the executives of the Northwoods League, Matt Bomberg, may be looking for you. I described you to him last night, so he may come search you out in the stands.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, I'll be ready.
Well,
I might have a couple drinks in me, but
well, that's awesome. This is cool for the fam, and I'm glad you're up there and get to experience and get a little time away.
You bet. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Furs.
You boys.
That's tonight. That's the Northwoods League All-Star Game.
That is a cool ballpark. I was just looking at that's where the Mankato Moondogs play.
It's a really good league. They added softball. Matt was telling me they added softball this year, but Scherzer, Granderson, and Alonso have played in it before. And it kind of was just a Minnesota. They were with Waterloo, Iowa, and then they went into North Dakota, and they've expanded. But they're all these small towns. Like their team in Madison does great. I think they still got a team in La Crosse. So it's a fun league.
Yeah, it's like the northern version of the Cape Cod League, because with all those small towns, and then I think there are still host families out there. But what's cool with who we cover in the college baseball game, a lot of those guys, like a lot of Nebraska's roster, will be out in the Northwoods League. You see a lot of Creighton players that are in the Northwoods League, Omaha players that are in the Northwoods League, because it's not major travel for them too, and they're at spots where their family can come and watch them play a little bit more than just once. So yeah, it's a cool league.
What are they? I think their tagline is "Summers are better in the woods."
Yep. Yeah.
So that fits like Minnesota, the land of 10,000 baseball fields.
Yeah.
Man, Minnesota, the state of Minnesota still has town ball. That's pretty cool if you ever get to experience that. We'll experience a conversation from Indianapolis with Andy Kendi. He is there. He is healthy. He is back. And he's on the road, and he's in Lucas Oil Stadium, and he'll join us next. All right, candidate for comeback journalist of the year, Andy Kendi is back on his feet. He's back at it.
They should be voting. They don't do any preseason polls or any votes officially at the Big Ten Media Days. This would be one that they should get on board with.
He is back. We saw him last week, and now he's in Indianapolis. That's a hell of a deal. You got a good agent. Good morning, my friend.
Good morning, boys. Welcome to Big Ten Football Media Days. I am sitting in the lunchroom, the cavernous lunchroom in the Lucas Oil Stadium, eagerly awaiting today's delicacies. But Tony Petitti will step up and give us appetizers in about 14 minutes at the podium. So it's a pretty interesting setup this year, boys. It's they kind of changed the configuration of the big meet. There's two big studio setups. CBS Sports Network is here along with Big Ten Network. So interesting deal how the conference is evolving in front of our eyes.
I know you'll be the first one to ask our very first coach that hits the podium today, Brett Bielema, a bunch of questions. So what are you going to ask, Brett? No, I'm just kidding. As far as just your anticipation, though, for day one, Illinois, Rutgers, Wisconsin, Northwestern, Purdue, Ohio State. So some interesting stuff there, especially with Ohio State, but also with what Tony Petitti, how he might address this new look Big Ten. What's just your overall expectation of day one?
Well, first of all, the first question to Brett Bielema was, what did you order at St. Elmo's? That's easy. That's
true.
That, right?
Yeah, that's the softball.
Easy. Yeah, I think the story for us, at least in Nebraska, locally for day one, is Tony Petitti and what he says in terms of expansion. My guess is he's not going to say anything, that the Big Ten is fine with where they're at, and he will give some classic non-answers and use up his 30 minutes at the podium that way. For looking at what's ahead of us, Illinois, Rutgers, Wisconsin, Northwestern, Purdue, and Ohio State. Ohio State is obviously the big attraction nationally because they are the clear-cut favorite to win the conference. They've got 4 members of this 12-guy preseason honor roll that the Big Ten rolls out. Nebraska doesn't have a guy on this team, by the way. Mm-hmm. No surprise there. But, it's interesting how we've come so far in a year because last year the big storyline was David Braun getting thrown to the Wolves at Northwestern. He under the radar talks today. Luke Fickell had a solid season last year. He will speak today. And I think for us, we look at who Nebraska is playing this year, and there's, we'll talk to, obviously, Brett Bielema. I'm kind of interested to hear what his take is on Friday Night Football. This is like, we'll get nuts and bolts and who's going to be your quarterback and running back. But a lot of these questions that come out of Big Ten Media Days that really kind of jump out off the page are the stuff that you don't really are almost big picture issues like Friday Night Football. And where is the Big Ten going in terms of television inventory and all that stuff? And are we going to have games in odd, unique TV windows coming up? But for me personally, looking at the rundown today, it's an interesting rundown because of who we in terms of Nebraska media, because there's a bunch of opponents, coaches and players that will be here that are on Nebraska's schedule. So I'm going to be interested to see what they think of Nebraska, what they think of Dylan Raiola and what Matt Rule is building there.
It has been pointed out, and this is kind of a continuing trend. There aren't a lot of quarterbacks that come. 54 players, only 5 are quarterbacks. Nebraska's not bringing their quarterback, which makes perfect sense. But I imagine that he might be a multi-year visitor to Indianapolis. Star power. If someone stopped you and said, Andy, I'm trying to do a story on Nebraska, give me a guy I should talk to that you would consider a star. Does Nebraska in 2024 have somebody that fits that definition?
Does Nebraska have somebody who can grab star power?
Yeah.
Well, I think they were right, because they're bringing Ben Scott, Ty Robinson, and Isaac Gifford, and those guys they don't jump off the page at people nationally. So I think if you're going to look to Nebraska's roster right now, I don't think there's a guy that says that's the star. I think that answer could be different come mid-season. Mm-hmm. I think a guy like Thomas Fedoni could be that guy, depending on how he's utilized in this offense. And obviously, Dylan Raiola is the big guy. And if as long as he lives up to half or 3/4 of what people are expecting this year, he will be obviously the guy that everybody circles when thinking of Nebraska. But this is kind of a unique situation where the Huskers are at in Big Ten Media Day when they approach this, because they are certainly under the radar. There's not a new coach. Yeah, there's a new AD, but nobody really gets into that, nationally. And really, there's a team that was 5-7 last year. Yeah, they're picked to finish 8th in the conference. It's kind of one of those, they're one of 18 teams. If you're a guy from, Des Moines or, Columbus, and you're looking for national storylines, Nebraska is like, well, if your school doesn't play Nebraska, you're not paying much attention.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. I think Matt Rule actually prefers to be lying in the weeds like that, because I think this team is built to surprise some teams this year, and I think they will.
Gary brought this up earlier today, and you've covered this event many, many times. When it comes to what you get out of your interaction between coaches and student athletes, we know Nebraska will be represented with Isaac Gifford, Ty Robinson, and Ben Scott. What do you typically draw from just the student athlete side of this event?
Good question. We talked about this last night at dinner, Lauren and I. This is my 17th Big Ten football media day. 17th. And I remember the days in Chicago. Thank you very much. And I remember the days where the head coaches would go person to person, local TV to local TV, where Joe Paterno would sit across from you, and you would get 5 minutes with them, and their SID would be standing over his shoulder saying "time's up."
Mm-hmm.
So, but we also, that being said, we also got Glenn Mason. So, I mean, you got to take the good. So, that being said, when you're looking at the players, the players, it's interesting. I actually look for more like presentability. If that's, they're going to say this, there's only so much they can say, right?
Right.
I look for how they present themselves, how confident they are, how comfortable they are, because I think, the more comfortable these players will be, and I know they are, this event is built for them to be uncomfortable, right? They're doing stuff that is out of their element. They're off the field, and they got to deal and be personable and all that stuff. But the more comfortable the players are with the media when we do one-on-ones or when they're at the podium, I always sense the more comfortable they are, the better the team will be, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like they know they're going to be good, and that's what I'm going to be looking for when I talk to Ben and to Ty and to Isaac tomorrow. The more comfortable they are with us, the more confident I think people should be with their team. And I think that's above all. I mean, they can tell you everything in terms of, they're not going to give you much scheme and approach in terms of defensive and offensive sets and all that stuff. But how the intangibles, that's what I kind of look for in these settings, and how they interact with not only each other, but other teams, because you get a lot of crossovers and guys who know each other from playing earlier. And I always think it's interesting because the guys from Ohio State, the guys from Michigan, they always carry themselves a little bit different than the guys from Purdue. It's just the fact of life.
Yeah, they do. That is pretty evident. Question you would ask Troy Dannon when you see him in Indianapolis tomorrow?
This is great, because if you remember, I was in the scrum. I asked Bill Moose the question a few years ago, which actually put all you guys. Yes. Do you have a win number that you can put on this?
Yeah, do it again.
And he says, I think we need to get the 6. Remember that?
Yes.
One, guys? You remember that day?
Yes.
Oh my God, that provided. You're welcome. It provided fodder for about a week. I think it's something more along those lines, a basic thing. Like, what's the baseline expectation for this football team this year? Because this is the thing that obviously football drives the athletic department. And what does he want to see? What would he consider a successful season for this team and this university? Because obviously everything is behind this football team, and as the football team goes, the athletic department goes. And I want to see what his answer to that is. And obviously he's got something that's teed up in his mind. So we'll see how he answers that question. We're open to get him off to the side depending on his timing. But because it's interesting, because he's been pretty elusive to the local media. He doesn't do many sit downs or, in this case, stand-ups for 5 minutes here and there. So I'll be interested to see how he handles those interactions, because, this is his first go around. And, he obviously has some comfortability because he knows some people from the Pac-12 conference, those sporting teams coming in. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles this car wash, as they call it.
All right, we'll let you get to work. I appreciate it. I'm glad to have you back on the air, and I'm looking forward to you and Lauren over the next 3 days, all the content that'll carry you all the way up to August 31st.
Absolutely. Thanks, boys. Thanks for the support, and thanks for all the well wishes.
That's Andy Kennedy from KETV, as they are there. So wall-to-wall coverage starts at 10. I'm sure that we'll carry a little bit of it Biggest news of the day, though. There was a wedding in Austin.
I saw that.
Oh, my gosh.
Congratulations.
Hey, Texas assistant football coach Jeff Banks and the pole assassin got married over the weekend.
Yeah.
If you need a refresher, 2021 lawsuit alleged that the pole assassin, otherwise known as Danielle Thomas, her pet monkey bit a child in Banks' backyard on Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
That was when it was revealed that Thomas is a dancer, and she is the pole assassin. And now she is Mrs. Banks. Hook 'em!
Yes, they are back.
National championship in Austin.
Let's bring up the pole assassin on the main stage.
A little bit of dancing.
Pole assassin.
You haven't missed a step.
Yes.
Oh, all right, get those dollar bills out there, pole assassin.
If you want to play, you got to pay. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 6.